All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee. And for those joining at home, we've now, with the trade programs as part of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade this evening. So on that note, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Senator the Honourable Don Farrell, Minister for Trade and Tourism. Hello, Minister.
Hello, Chair.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And George Mina, Deputy Secretary of the Trade and Investment Group in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Mr. Mina.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you as well.
Good to see you.
It's my favourite part of the day, but don't tell the others that. Now, do either of you gentlemen have an opening statement that you'd like to make tonight?
Thank you, Chair. I don't, but I understand Mr. Mina does.
Excellent. Deputy Secretary, you have the call.
Chair.
The floor's yours.
Chair, at a challenging time for the global trading landscape, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade is focused on positioning Australia as strongly as possible on its trade and economic interests. This means maintaining strong partnerships, strong influence and networks, including through activist trade diplomacy, and strong resilience at home in our economy and institutions. These are the assets that Australia has brought to bear in engaging closely with the new US administration. We've put forward at the highest levels Australia's significant contribution to US prosperity and the mutual benefit of our deep and long-standing economic partnership. Our patient and steadfast diplomacy has allowed us to work cooperatively with China to wind back around $20 billion worth of trade impediments on Australian exports. Australia's live rock lobster trade to China restarted in December 2024, and that followed the removal of Chinese impediments on Australian wine, red meat, barley, oat and hay, cotton, timber, coal and copper ores and concentrates. We're working closely with business and the community at large to diversify Australia's trading markets, while our industries diversify the products and services they offer the world. We finalised a deal with the United Arab Emirates in November 2024, expected to increase Australian exports by around $700 million a year to our largest trade and investment partner in the Middle East and a key security partner. And as you know, this agreement followed a completed deal with the United Kingdom, which entered into force in May 2023 and secures duty-free access to the UK for 99% of Australian products. We've upgraded the free trade agreement between Australia, New Zealand and ASEAN. This upgrade, which Australia ratified on 20 February this year, will further reduce barriers for Australian trade. We've strengthened the economic partnerships and links of our own region through our Southeast Asia economic strategy. As part of that strategy, we're reviewing our network of trade agreements in the region to identify opportunities to upgrade and ensure that they keep expanding business opportunities. Chair, Australia has benefited greatly from rules-based trade. We're leading work in the WTO to drive reform to that institution because we know that it urgently needs to respond to the concerns of its members if it's to remain relevant. We're also driving new rules to meet the needs of a new economic era, including to deliver new global rules on digital trade. We've opened up consultation on trade policy through a variety of new mechanisms, such as the Trade 2040 Task Force, which brings a range of business, union and civil society representatives into policy-making efforts to chart a course for Australia's trading future. We're advancing First Nations trade and investment for Australia, bringing together First Nations business leaders, industry groups and experts in international trade for the first time earlier this month. And we played a lead role in finalising a landmark global treaty that protects First Nations intellectual property in May last year, a historic practical step that helps First Nations businesses and exporters share in the economic benefits of trade. Australia's activism in trade diplomacy shapes a safer world for our economy, creating jobs, delivering better outcomes for our consumers and boosting national prosperity. Chair, embracing global trade and investment has always been at the heart of Australia's security and prosperity. Trade supports 31% of Australia's economic output and 3 million Australian jobs. There's no doubt we're living through a challenging time for our trading interests. And as the Prime Minister says, Australia is a trading nation. And in navigating this challenging time, we need a pragmatic blend of dealing with the world as it is and hewing towards our bearings, our commitment to openness and rules in global trade to the greatest extent possible. We'll continue to use all of our assets, including our strong partnerships around the world and our first-class trade policy expertise in the department, to continue our activism in favour of Australian interests. Thank you, Chair. We look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Mr. Mina. Now, are you happy to table that for us so we can have that statement, the opening statement circulated to senators? Yeah, sure. Sure, someone from the Secretariat will assist by collecting that for us. Thank you, Georgia. Now, Senator Cadell, you have the call, my friend.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mina, we might start with one of the earliest things you said there. We're talking about challenging times in trade. You spoke about the US specifically. Your phrase, I think, in that, if I'm not paraphrasing, was we've put forward at the highest levels our interaction with the United States. Has the highest levels, has the Prime Minister had any discussions regarding trade with the US?
I think, Senator, thank you for the question. It will be evident to all who were watching the media on the 11th of February after the Prime Minister's discussions with the President that there were such discussions as part of the Prime Minister's phone call with the President.
On that first phone call on the congressional issue, right? Okay.
Well, yes, I'm not sure if it was the first, but it was that phone call after inauguration, exactly.
Has anyone from your department been briefed or met with the US government since the inauguration in January?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Has
please?
anyone from your department been briefed or met with the US government since the inauguration?
Indeed, Senator, the Australian Embassy is working very actively, led very ably by Ambassador Rudd, with an extraordinary level of activism and engagement with the new US administration.
Can I get a list of who has met from your department and when?
Certainly, Senator. This was traversed earlier in the day,
yep.
And we have undertaken to get some material to you. Of course, this was complemented, this activism at the Washington end, by some very significant political level engagement, as we also traversed earlier today. The Prime Minister's phone call, the Deputy Prime Minister's visit, the Foreign Minister's engagement at the inauguration, and of course the Treasurer's visit in the last couple of days.
All those names you meant, I think the Foreign Minister also went to the inauguration. Did the Ambassador go to the inauguration, Minister?
So, Senator Peter Savchuk, First Assistant Secretary, Geostrategy and Partnerships Division. As Mr. Mina mentioned, there have been a lot of high-level contacts, including the Prime Minister's call on the 11th of February that followed up his initial congratulatory call to President Trump when he won the election. They covered a raft of issues, including issues in relation to our value as an economic partner to the United States. We had the Foreign Minister went to Washington for the inauguration. That was quite unusual because foreign dignitaries tend not to be invited. So as the first time an Australian Foreign Minister attended the inauguration, she had the opportunity to meet with Secretary of State Rubio and with National Security Advisor Waltz, where she articulated the value of our alliance, but also our economic partnerships in terms familiar to you. And as Mr. Mina mentioned, as reported in terms of the Prime Minister's phone call with President Trump. And we've had the Deputy Prime Minister meet with his counterpart. In fact, that was the first time that Secretary of Defence Hegseth met with a foreign counterpart. That was with our Deputy Prime Minister. And we had the Treasurer, obviously, in Washington this week for the Super Summit that the Embassy hosted, where we had very high-level attendance. I think it's a tribute to our Ambassador in Washington and the team that he leads, the networks that they're able to galvanise in order to get these ministerial-level contacts, which are really quite, puts us very much at the fore as a close ally with good access in the US system. And he does that by the leverage he has in those networks across Congress, in the White House, in the Pentagon, governors at the state level. And that's all come to bear in very evident ways. It's very hard to enumerate all the contacts that our embassy has had across that network, but I suppose the outcome of those contacts is very clear from the high level of ministerial engagement we've had to date.
Well, we don't know the outcome yet. The intent of those contacts would be fair, would you say?
That's an ongoing body of work, of course, as our Minister mentioned earlier today, the Foreign Minister.
Going back to the inauguration, you mentioned the Foreign Minister. My question to the Minister was, Did the ambassador go to that as well, or did the foreign minister take his seat? Or
Look, I understand, but that both of them attended the inauguration, but I'll get that checked and come back to you.
Okay.
Senator, I can add, so for the inauguration, it was the foreign minister that attended the actual inauguration ceremony. The ambassador did not. Typically, ambassadors do represent foreign governments at inauguration ceremonies, but the foreign minister was there as invitee.
We had one seat and we grabbed, yeah, understood. Has the department prepared any meeting briefs for Ambassador Rudd or representatives for meetings on trade details since November 24?
Well, Senator, as is often the case, we provide supporting materials to all of our senior ambassadorial representatives. So yes, we have been providing material.
Not material meeting for specific meeting briefs for specific meetings? Have they been occurring?
Well, typically, Senator, meeting briefs for an ambassador would be fashioned, shaped and adjusted on for the circumstances by the relevant embassy concerned. It's not typically the case that Canberra will be shaping those briefs in sort of great detail here. What we do provide, and what we provide on a regular basis, is supporting analysis, arguments, material that goes to our ambassadors for use in their advocacy.
I know your use of language is not typical that Australia would be involved in preparation of this. Has it happened in this occurred? Has Australia...
Well, Australia would certainly be involved, Senator.
No, you said the Australian officers.
Canberra, the Canberra end of our operation might not finalise a brief, but look, it depends on the circumstances. All sorts of circumstances involved, and different products are produced for different occasions.
So was there any specific analysis or advice prepared for specific meetings that can be tabled?
We would not be putting our advice, tabling our advice.
Okay. Has the ambassador been refused any meetings with any officials within the American government?
Senator, we would need to take that on notice.
Ambassador Rudd's not the sort of guy who would take no for an answer, Senator Cadell.
Well, he took yes for an answer when he was told to take down tweets and social media then, I noticed that. But it's... is the department doing work on the impact of the first round of trade, steel and aluminium, and the impact on Australia?
Senator, as a general proposition, the department is working on economic analysis, on the potential impact of tariffs, and we're doing that in conjunction with the Australian Treasury, which takes the lead on modelling matters.
So Treasury's taking the economic modelling lead?
On questions to do with economic modelling, macroeconomic modelling, yes, Treasury does take the lead. We have a capability inside our department, and we have our Chief Economist, Mr Woods, with us. But that capability is not as extensive as that of the Australian Treasury.
Mr Woods, has the department formed an opinion and supplied to government the estimates of the impact of on the Australian economy of the first round of tariffs?
So Dave Woods, Chief Economist from Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Senator, to pick up from the point that Mr Mina said, we are working very closely with the Department of the Treasury and with other government agencies that will have an interest in understanding and assessing the impact of potential trade measures on different parts of the Australian economy. So that would also include the Department of Industry, Science and Resources, would include ABARES over in DAF. So we are working closely to make sure that the assessment that we are pulling together is coherent and it's consistent. And so if you look then at the advice which the testimony that Treasury offered yesterday, then that would be very similar to our own findings. That is to say, it's there are impacts there which really, a range of scenarios out there, very dynamic, very fluid. So we are just trying to keep a broad sense of what that impact would look like, recognising that the final level of the impact will reflect the size of the tariffs which have been imposed and who they're being imposed on, whether they're imposed on us directly or whether they're imposed on major trading partners.
Senator, if I may, we just wanted to correct our evidence about the attendance of Mr. Rudd, Ambassador Rudd. He was in fact in the inauguration room, as the Minister said.
Thank you very much. The relations with America, with the United States, I won't say America, it's the whole continent, with the United States of America have been historically strong. I think we're talking about the reasons they have a trade surplus with us. We're investing in AUKUS. We've done all these sorts of things. I'm concerned that the three leaders of the Quad, other than Australia, have all met person to person. Is there attempts to try and meet at the highest levels face to face in the short term around this trade area?
Senator, I would just restate that our foreign minister was at the inauguration, and yes, there was a meeting of Quad foreign ministers immediately the day after. We take this as a very encouraging sign. There has been very high-level engagement, as Dr. Sobchak has pointed out, including a visit by our Deputy Prime Minister. So we are very confident in our position, how well we are positioned at this stage.
Okay. Minister, you managed to get a Guernsey at the Democratic National Congress. Was there a choice between that and the RNC, and why was which?
Sorry, what was the question?
You went to the Democratic National Conference. Did you get an invite to the Republican National Conference? Did you have to choose? And
no, I didn't get an invite to the Republican one, and had I done so, I would have been very keen to attend. This was the first time any Australian minister had been invited to any either Republican or Democrat convention. But when I was in Chicago, I ensured that I met with Republican senators as well as the Democrats to get the best possible insight into what was going to happen at the forthcoming American election.
The travel log for the trip between 18th and 23 August 24 says ministerial meeting in Chicago. Really long meeting, 4 days. Is there more detail available on what happened in
Yes, I'd be very happy to give you a full report.
Table later?
Hey?
To table?
I'd be very happy to give you a full report on what transpired. I met a variety of... I'll get the full figure for you, but for instance, on one morning, myself and Ambassador Rudd met Catherine Tai, the United States Trade Representative. We met the Chuck Schumer, the Majority Leader in the House of Reps, and a series of very senior American political figures.
Thank you. Mr Woods, if we're doing some work on the steel and aluminium effects, are we doing the just-in-cases on the scenarios the US has been espousing, such as 25% or matching GST or matching value-added taxes? Are we doing other scenarios on what we may be affected on if US does decide to put worldwide sanctions or tariffs on?
So, Senator, I think the challenge that we're facing is, of course, the number of announcements that are coming forward, and to be candid,
that's a challenge everyone's facing. But anyway,
the ability to model so quickly the number of scenarios that have been put forward, I think, is beyond the capability of pretty much any government department in Canberra at the moment. So the way I think across the board that we're approaching the issue would be to say that let's look at the modelling that we've been doing on the range of scenarios dating back from before Christmas. That gives us, if you like, a first order sense of what the magnitude of effects would be, even as we're waiting for some clarity about what would be the actual tariffs that the US chooses to impose. So again, if I were to come back to my previous answer, and again pointing back to what Treasury spoke to yesterday, that would be to say, looking at those scenarios from prior Christmas that as give us a baseline, that speaks to a relatively modest impact at a macro level, even as we recognise that there are going to be obviously individual industries that will be more severely affected depending on who's in the line of those tariffs. But recognising also, and this is picking up a point that the Secretary of Treasury spoke about yesterday, that the floating exchange rate, the flexible exchange rate, is quite the shock absorber for any external shocks that come to the Australian economy, such as tariffs.
Are there any works done, early or otherwise, provided government or not, on looking at retaliatory measures and potential opportunities to balance out if higher tariffs come to play between Australia and the United States?
Senator, if we can just, your question is going to the retaliation by other governments.
Pardon? Any measures Australia is looking at or examining should tariffs be placed on Australia.
Right. Well, Senator, I think you're going now to a hypothetical, and
I'm happy to say that.
Not in a position to respond.
No. The question is not the hypothetical may happen. The question is, has work been done on those hypotheticals, which is a real question.
Senator, I think in answering that question, one would have to contemplate a hypothetical. And
Chair, I would say that if a question said was, would we look at retaliating if this happened, is a hypothetical question. The question, is work being done, should they happen, is a real question.
What I can say, Senator, is the question of the response of the Australian government in economic terms to any actions that might be taken on tariffs was traversed, as Mr Woods said earlier yesterday, by the Secretary of the Treasury, and I'd refer you to those comments.
And I accept those comments on a macro level and all those numbers. What you're not telling me is if there is any work going on by your department in real time, not hypothetically.
Not by our department.
Your department has no advice, has given no advice on exposed US things or imbalance of trade on any particular sector, which may be retaliatory, valid for retaliatory action.
Well, Senator, I think it's fair to say that we are doing everything we can to advance Australia's national interests on this issue, to advocate for Australian interests, to ensure that we have the right contacts in place, so that this is of course something which is a priority for the government, and we will continue to do everything we can to position Australia in the right way.
And I know this was asked in another meeting, but I will ask again: has there been any request for a face-to-face meeting between the Prime Minister and the President of the United States?
Well, Senator, that's a question for the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Okay. Chair, I'm happy to rotate if...
Sure. Senator Brockman?
I'm happy to, but if there are others who have been waiting
I'm
longer,
happy to also close and we can move on to the next witness.
I'm sure I can get through this very, very quickly, Chair. Right. Thank you for your indulgence. I'll start with Mr Mina. You gave the opening statement?
Yes, that's right.
Correct. Sorry, I wasn't in the room at the time, but I did pick up a little bit of it. And I'm just reflecting on the paragraph which reads, "We need a pragmatic blend of dealing with the world as it is and hewing towards our bearings. Our commitment to openness and rules of global trade to the greatest extent possible." How does the ideological decision to ban the live export trade in sheep fit within those parameters?
Well, Senator, I think we've traversed the live sheep export issue for some time. I can take you through the situation with respect to the implementation of that policy. I could also take you through...
No, I'm just wondering how that decision, which was clearly ideological, fits within your opening statement.
Well, Senator,
and perhaps the Minister would like to answer it.
Just one at a time.
Look, I'm happy to answer it, Senator Brockman. You'll be disappointed to know the answer won't be any different from all of the other answers I've given you on every occasion that you've
given me a good one, Minister.
raised the issue. But I'm happy to to go through it. Look, we took this issue to the electorate at the last election. We made it very clear that an incoming Labor government would end the shipment of live sheep, and in accordance with that decision, we won the election. And I might point out one of the strongest states for us then, and I'm sure again at the next election, was Western Australia. So it was overwhelmingly endorsed, that policy, by the people of Western Australia. We did. I think we would have been criticised, Senator, if, having been elected with that policy, that suddenly we said, no, we're not going to implement the policy. We have done it in such a way to give the industry the maximum time to adapt to the change, because we understand it is a change. And of course, we've put our money where our mouth is, and provided financial assistance. You'd be aware we recently entered into a new free trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates. That's making its way through the Parliament as we speak, and I understand was endorsed by the very recently by the Treaties Committee, and therefore will be sort of quickly endorsed by the Parliament. What I'd say to those people, those farmers affected in Western Australia by this change, is that we don't want to see less sheep exports into the Middle East. We actually want to see more exports to the Middle East. One of the things, if we can achieve that, of course, is that there are more jobs in Australia, but more particularly more jobs in Western Australia. There's a link between this new free trade agreement, because the removal of those tariffs on 99.9% of all goods into the UAE gives us a special advantage over other countries without a free trade agreement. We should use that opportunity to try and export more lamb into the Middle East. The way of thinking of the UAE is that it's like the Woolies warehouse of the Middle East. If you can get your product into the UAE, you can get it to all of those countries that surround the UAE. Our ambition ought to be, and the ambition of those farmers ought to be, not to send less sheep to the Middle East, but to send more sheep to the Middle East. We can create some extra jobs in Australia, which will be good for Western Australia. There'll be a variety, because the number of flights are coming back. There's an opportunity to send high-value, either chilled or frozen meat to the Middle East, particularly that now the UAE at that lower tariff rate. I'd say to those farmers, and I have said to certainly the National Farmers Federation, we'd like to work with you to get the best result for Australia, but in particular those farmers in Western Australia. I think there's an opportunity with a positive mindset. So put aside the opportunity to make some political points about this. There is a practical way in which we can improve both the way in which we transport our animals, but the way in which we value add our products. And that's what I'd like to do as the Trade Minister. I'm sure the Agriculture Minister thinks exactly the same way. So don't make it a political issue, make it an economic issue. And with a bit of cooperation and a bit of goodwill by everybody involved, I think we can actually get a better result for Australia by exporting chilled and frozen meat that has created jobs in Australia.
Minister, are you aware that the sheep flock in Western Australia has declined by 25% since you enacted your policy, and is predicted to decline to 50% of its size under your policy?
Well,
how is that benefiting West Australian farmers, Minister?
Well, there's a range of reasons, Senator Brockman, why the sheep flock goes up and down. What I'm saying is, I think there's a good solution to this issue if there's a willingness to sit down by all of the parties and work through what is the best outcome for Australia. And I think that there's an opportunity here to export more Australian sheep and not less. And, you know,
so were you aware of the decline, Minister?
Well, as I say, the herds go up and down. We've had a terrible drought.
You're aware that 2 abattoirs have closed in Western Australia since you announced the policy?
Sure.
2 sheep meat abattoirs?
I don't think you can have it both ways, Senator Brockman. You can't say, look, there are fewer abattoirs.
And there are less sheep.
Abattoirs
you can have it both ways.
No. I don't think with due respect, you can't have it both ways. Look, what I'm saying is...
You can't have what both ways?
What I'm saying is that there's an opportunity here to export more Australian product into the Middle East in light of that new free trade agreement with the UAE. I'd like sheep farmers to be part of that and get the financial benefit of that agreement. And this government is willing to work with the industry to get the best possible outcome. Now, it may be that, you know, you seek to exploit the situation for your political advantage. I hope that's not the case.
You sought to exploit some
No. We took a policy.
Some preferences from the Animal Justice Party.
We took a policy. We took a
You're
policy to the
industry.
We didn't hide. We didn't hide our policy under a bushel.
Oh, yes, you did.
We did not. We made it very clear.
Last 2 elections, if I remember.
We made it very clear what we were going to do, and we did what we said we were going to do. But I think there's a way that both, you know, there's a win-win possibility here, but it does take, willingness on both parties to sit down and talk about it. We're certainly willing to do that. I'd like to see the industry do the same.
It didn't hide under a bushel. Every single Labor member in Western Australia was asked by the countrymen what the position of the Labor Party was. Not one replied. With regards to the government's ban on live sheep exports from sea, can DFAT provide details on negative feedback received from current export destination countries, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, UAE? In particular, has there been written feedback?
Has there been, sorry, Senator, the last part of the question, please?
Formal right. feedback. I know there's been some informal conversations. We talked about that last estimates.
Yeah, Senator, since the last estimates, there haven't been any new concerns raised. There is one additional point that Mr Mark Innes-Brown may wish to add, and I may also just add, by virtue of the statistics, that the volume and the value of live sheep exports were around about $40 million in the last financial year. That compares to approximately $4 billion in frozen and chilled sheep meat exports, just to expand on the Minister's points just now.
Senator Mark Innes-Brown, First Assistant Secretary, Middle East and Africa Division. The only, as Mr Mina said, in terms of countries, governments that have raised this, the only time this has come up, to my knowledge, and I was present, was when we had senior officials talks with Kuwait in November, and the representative of the relevant state enterprise, KLTT, Kuwait Livestock Transport and Trading, the acting CEO was present, and of course he raised his concern about the phase out of the trade. Other than that, since the last estimates, I'm not aware of any formal communication to us by any other government on the issue.
As requested at last estimates by Senator Cadell, can DFAT provide country-by-country volumes of live sheep to each Middle East destination in the past year? Is that published online by destination? I know overall volumes are published.
Look, Senator, if we have the data, we'll provide it, yes.
Okay. And could we also have chilled and frozen sheep meat exported into each Middle Eastern destination in the past year?
Beyond the totals I read out earlier, we don't have that country breakdown here, but we're certainly
Could we have both of those on notice?
You've got it here? Do you want to?
If possible, in a timely way?
I think
Mr. Innes-Brown
I think we do have the information
I've
here.
got the values, not the volumes, if you will.
Values fluctuate significantly. I'd prefer the volumes, to be honest.
Okay, well,
I mean, I'm happy to have both, but if you don't have both to compare, then it's probably
no, I
better.
don't.
It's probably better that you take both on notice. If you,
okay,
to be honest.
yeah, that's fine.
As I said earlier, there has been a dramatic loss in industry confidence in Western Australia. West Australian sheep farmers are getting out of sheep in droves, literally. 25% decline in 1 year in the number of sheep in Western Australia. 2 sheep meat processing facilities have closed. I believe another one is in at severe risk. I hope that's not the case, but that is what I understand. And Wool Production Forecasting Committee have reported a dramatic reduction in wool production not seen since the 1920s. Has DFAT seen or modelled the effect of the ban on valuable export commodities such as wool?
Well, Senator, these would be matters for the agriculture portfolio and their modelling capability through their institutions.
So you don't track the export volumes of commodities?
We certainly track export commodities and export volumes and values, and we'll be happy to provide those data. What we don't do is do economic modelling on future flock or export outlook for agriculture. That's properly the province of the agriculture portfolio.
All right. At last estimates, Minister Farrell, as he has just done, referred to new flight capacity. In particular, he mentioned flights out of Adelaide, improving freight capacity for cargo into the UAE. Can you quantify Emirate freight air capacity for chilled and frozen sheep meat out of Western Australia as a replacement for the WA live sheep exports by sea?
What was the question though, Senator?
Can you quantify the air freight capacity on Emirates for chilled or frozen sheep meat out of Western Australia as a replacement for live exports?
Is the question, can I identify the potential amount of,
I'm
or the actual...
I'm asking DFAT if they can quantify that.
How much sheep meat
what's the capacity?
is going, what's the capacity in...
air freight question.
Air freight questions?
Yeah, it's an air freight question. Senator, look, with respect to air freight, of course, we work closely with the infrastructure and transport portfolio, and of course, in discussions with them, as the Minister's already made clear, we make very clear our interests in expansion of air freight. But as to the quantification of that air freight capacity, modelling of it, that would be properly the transport portfolio who'd be in a position to do that.
Can DFAT provide any update on increasing the capacity flight frequency of existing carrier Qatar, who currently transport chilled and frozen sheep meat into the Middle East, particularly out of WA?
Senator, the same applies. The questions of air freight capacity are best directed to the transport portfolio.
So this was supposedly the solution, but there doesn't seem to be much of a solution. DAF recently approved protocols ahead of the commencement of the export of Australian live sheep, cattle and goats into the Kingdom of Morocco. Can you please advise why the opening of this new market was not announced either by Minister Farrell or by your department?
I'm not sure it's the province of our department, Senator.
Really? It's not a success? You've just opened up a new market, helped to open up a new market?
No, he means what?
Senator, when it comes to
Parliament or not.
the announcement of agricultural export protocols,
So you had nothing to do with it?
they are typically matters handled, Senator, by security officials in the agriculture portfolio, as you'd know, and it is properly the province of the agriculture portfolio.
This month, the Moroccan delegation visited West Australian farms, feedlots, export facilities and toured a live sheep export vessel loading in Fremantle. What is DFAT doing to expedite the trade in up to 100,000 live sheep per annum to Morocco in order to provide food security for a nation whose flock has been decimated by years of drought?
Well, Senator, our embassy in Rabat has played a role in terms of furnishing, facilitating the flow of documentation during the development of this arrangement. So that has been our particular role.
That's it?
Well, as we explained earlier, Senator, the questions relating to the actual negotiation of the substance of the export protocols are probably for DAF and supported absolutely by our embassy in Rabat in the way that Mr Ennis Brown has mentioned.
Thought you'd be happy about it. The visiting Moroccan delegation outlined plans to secure their first sheep shipment before the commencement of the Northern Summer Moratorium. What opportunity does this new trade provide with respect to growing Australia's trade relationship with Morocco?
Well, I think, Senator, it is self-evident that there are now export protocols in place, and that does provide an outlet for Australian trade into that market. Of course, we've got strong interests in expansion and diversification of our trade into North Africa, and that's absolutely, this is a part of that.
Bit hard to expand and diversify when you're closing down and banning. In May 2023, Rick Wilson MP, in his capacity as Shadow Assistant Minister for Trade, visited Morocco at the invitation of then Agriculture Minister Professor Mohamed Siddiqui, where he attended the Agricultural and Trade Exposition SIAM. This is French by the look of it, and I shouldn't even try and pronounce it. Salon International de l'Agriculture à Maroc. Did I get anywhere near close? Probably not. Along with European Union, Middle Eastern and African ag ministers and delegates. On his return, Minister Wilson penned a letter to Minister Farrell recommending Australia be represented at future SIAMs. Has DFAT or Austrade received any instructions to have Australian agriculture, technology and trade represented at this event?
Received instructions, Senator, from
the Minister.
Senator, as I've been trying to explain, there is absolutely an interest in expansion of trade with North Africa. We, as a matter of course, will be looking for opportunities to do so in the sector of agribusiness, and this agricultural exposition in Morocco is no doubt one of the many opportunities available to plug into our expanding export trade into North Africa. Now, of course, meat is part of that. We set out earlier the $4 billion in frozen and chilled sheep meat, but so too a range of other Australian exports, whether they be in dairy or other agricultural sectoral areas. So we'll look for those opportunities and use them to the full.
Just this week, Senator, I met the Moroccan ambassador, and the desire to facilitate greater trade and investment, of course, was one of the subjects we traversed. So we are looking, and she's very active, talking to Australian business, as is our ambassador, new ambassador in Rabat. So it's sort of not just about, it's across the board. There's a range of areas we're looking at. So it is one of the features of our relationship with Morocco. It's actually quite a dynamic relationship. There's been, as you mentioned, there's been Mr Wilson has visited, but also there was a private parliamentary group went in recent months. We're coming up to a significant anniversary of diplomatic relations next year with Morocco, and it's also one of the subjects I discussed the ambassador about finding appropriate ways to mark that anniversary. So it's been a very it's been a relationship that's grown since we opened in Morocco, which wasn't all that long ago.
Well, what do you think, Minister Farrell? I mean, brand new market just opened up, 100,000 sheep exported before the moratorium hits in the middle of the year. It's a great opportunity for Australia. We should be in there, shouldn't we?
We should be taking every opportunity.
That's a great opportunity for West Australian farmers, isn't it?
We should be taking every opportunity to increase our export opportunities, particularly to Morocco. I myself have had some discussions with Moroccan officials about that very topic. The whole focus, if you like, of the federal government since we came to office almost 3 years ago has been to increase trade diversification. And that's what we've done, Senator. And of course, the great beneficiary of a lot of that has been the West Australian economy. We continue to constantly look for new opportunities. Since we've come to government, of course, we've implemented the UK Free Trade Agreement. That has resulted in a doubling of our trade with the United Kingdom, but a 500% increase in beef and sheep meat exports into the United Kingdom. In fact, one of the reasons that the Europeans gave me for not agreeing to a higher volume of sheep meat and beef into the EU under the proposed EU Free Trade Agreement was that we had taken their market in the United Kingdom. Last night I was with the Prime Minister at Deakin University in Melbourne, where we launched our roadmap to India. We want to dramatically expand our opportunities in India. The Prime Minister referred to a 168% increase in agricultural exports to India. There's opportunities there. I've talked about the UAE Free Trade Agreement. That gives us great opportunities in the Middle East, and we are looking for those opportunities everywhere, Senator. Wherever we can expand our trade, we are doing that. Why? Because what we saw is if you put all of your eggs in the one basket, you're sure to come a cropper. So it's our view that we take every opportunity that we can to expand our export opportunities, and we'll continue to do that. I mean, it's a tough world out there, Senator Brockman. There are plenty of people that would like to take our markets. We have to be an activist government. We can't sit on our hands. We have to be out there selling our product, and that's exactly what we've been doing over the last 3 years. And that's what we'll continue to do when we're re-elected for the next 3 years.
Okay. I'm asking you not to be an activist. I'm asking you to be pragmatic. Thank you,
Minister.
Chair.
Thank you, Senator Brockman.
I'm also very pragmatic, Senator Brockman.
All right.
The ultimate pragmatist.
You are, Minister. That's why everyone loves you.
Didn't like my answer.
Senator Cadell.
Thank you. Has the department been consulted at all on the government's carbon leakage review?
Senator, I think you might be referring to the Iozzo review led by the eminent economist Frank Iozzo, and yes, we have been engaged in that process.
When did you first get involved in that process?
Quite early on, Senator, in the early stages of the process. I certainly spoke to Professor Iozzo myself, at an early stage in his work. It may have been around middle of last year, but we've been fully engaged.
Okay. Has your department provided any written submissions or policy advice to that review?
As to written submissions, I will have to check. We have.
So, Senator David Woods, Chief Economist, we've engaged with the review through a number of ways. As Mr Meany said, right from the very beginning of the review, I think at the start of last year, we've had staff seconded to the review. We've commented not so much through written submissions as in the normal business of government where papers have been circulated for comment. We have offered a comment, and our colleagues in the trade law team have also offered legal advice.
Could they be tabled?
Senator, it's not in line with long-standing practice. We won't be able to table the legal advice.
I understand. The other policy comments or any written submission?
So those go, I mean, these are the sort of normal thing that you would have in a bureaucracy, so they would be emails bouncing around over a sustained period
If I
of
narrow
time.
my scope, have there been any formal policy submissions at all?
No,
Okay,
no,
that's
Senator,
fine.
there haven't.
Now, the slide deck for the November second consultation paper was put out in DQ.
Yeah.
Now, Professor Yotso, in that, is saying steel exports are set to decrease by circa 10% by 2030, and cement clinker imports are set to increase by more than 25%. Is that the understanding of the department?
Senator, look, I'm going to. I know that this was traversed at some length with DQ the other day. I'm not in a position really to offer any more comment than what has already been covered. It was that modelling and those results were done through the review, not through my team. So I can't really offer any more comment.
So, your team specifically, what sort of jurisdiction do you have over the people that are seconded? Are they no longer reporting through? That's what I want to get to your department's input into that, yeah.
So we had one team member, to be precise. He was working directly into that team in DQ, but in doing so, he obviously brought expertise from DFAT in terms of trade and trade policy, and he was then the ability to help us to understand at what point the process was at, the better to help engage, for us to then engage with the review process being led out of DQ.
Has the department...
Let me been supported out of DQ, still
right,
been,
okay.
I should say, chose my words badly, being supported out of DQ, but obviously still being led by Professor Yotso.
Yep. What advice or notes has the department specifically given regarding the projected 25% increase in cement clinker being imported into Australia?
Senator, I'm stretching my memory there. I don't recall that to have been a specific feature. We were looking more at the framework of the review. Its broader findings in terms of carbon leakage, which yes would include what you're describing, but how that would then translate through into the policy options that were described in the consultation papers that were released.
So I think you said earlier, but I don't want to verbal you, I just want clarification. No economic modelling on the decrease of the steel?
Not through my team, not through DFAT.
Right, understood. So the next step then is the potential, and it's discussion paper, the potential creation of CBAM?
So Senator, I mean, as again, I think you may have covered this with DQ the other day. The report, as I understand, is still with Professor Yotso.
Yep.
As I understand, is yet to be completed and considered. Certainly yet to be considered by the government. So at this point, it remains as on the label of being an independent report.
Yep.
And there's been no decision, no consideration taken by government onto his recommendations.
Is it the policy position of the department, Mr. Mayor, that a CBAM is a trade barrier?
Senator, these are matters for government. What we do advise on are the economic costs associated with certain measures, also the economic costs of absence of coordination of measures, And we also, in addition, provide advice on the legal consistency of measures with the World Trade regime. We don't take a departmental policy position. These are matters for government.
What is the legal position in the World Trade regime of CBAMs?
Well, Senator, as with most things relating to public international law, these are complex questions, and they depend entirely on the consequences and the design of certain measures. So it's difficult to make broad generalisations.
I understand that. It's not that difficult. If I accept that a choice whether we implement a CBAM is a choice of government, how you would view another country's CBAM is not a choice of government. That would be advice. How do you see CBAMs by other countries?
Well, there it's easier to speak with respect to past practice. So, with respect, for instance, to the European Union, we have made the case to the European Union that design of a border adjustment mechanism needs to meet certain provisions of the World Trade Organization agreements, and we've been urging consistency on a variety of points, including non-discrimination, the method of the levying of measures and the like, to ensure consistency, and urging that of the European Union designers of their particular scheme.
Right. Next question I have is written. I'm taking your thing. It's a hypothetical, so I'll skip that one. No. Have you provided advice on potential risk to exporters if to the government or to the consultation, let's say to the consultation, on the potential risks of a CBAM being implemented by Australia?
We have provided, as Mr Woods has already made clear, advice to the process, including on how the process might deal with carbon leakage in a manner that is most consistent with both our trade interests, that does go to your point on exporters, but also with respect to our trade law interests.
So both aspects. So,
both aspects.
But you've done the it could in relation to CBAM on exporters. Is your evidence there? Is that able to be tabled? Your advice there?
Well, as Mr Woods has explained, in the normal deliberations of government, we're not able to share that advice. But and it has been a very dynamic process also, as Mr Woods has explained. We can talk to the fact of the legal advice, but long-standing practice dictates that we can't share that advice.
I understand. Has the department received any feedback from trading partners of concerns about a border mechanism?
Well, we can talk in the broad, Senator, about that question in respect of the policy debates that are underway.
Correct.
In capitals such as Geneva, and there have been a number of countries active in the discussions in capitals such as Geneva, seeking that CBAMs in their entirety, in the general, carbon border adjustment mechanisms be designed in a manner that is trade consistent and trade law consistent. Now that's been a comment directed to all those who might be contemplating them, including other jurisdictions such as Canada, the UK, etc. There's also been an effort underway in Paris under the auspices of the OECD to find methods by which countries might coordinate on the design of CBAM such that they might be made more interoperable, again, in order to reduce the trade costs of different systems, making the costs of trade higher at the border between different regimes. So that effort is an effort sponsored by the OECD, in which a number of countries engaged, and Australia is engaged in that process too.
I accept those broader. Oh, sorry.
So, sorry, I might also add, Senator, that one of the features of the review process that Frank Yotso, Professor Yotso, has been running has been quite extensive international engagement.
Right.
So Professor Yotso has travelled to quite a range of our major trading partners and I'll name a few off the top of my head. It might not be comprehensive, but certainly he's been through Europe, North Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, at various points through the review process to outline what that review is about and the range of issues that he is considering as part of the review process. And the general sense from that has been a very welcoming sense of the engagement of the process itself being important. That trading partners have welcomed that outreach and the opportunity to provide their views. If I was to try and sum up the feedback that, as I understand it, has been relatively relaxed about the work that Frank Iozzo has been leading and that prospect of Australia taking action against carbon leakage. Again, reinforcing the point, though, that there has been no government view taken on this. It's purely an independent review.
I accept the independent review. I accept it going forward. I'm looking for the communication between trading partners on this. So, accepting all of that, has there been any government come direct to DFAT and express a view that any CBAM would be protectionist or seen as a tariff?
Any CBAM
or
any CBAM introduced by Australia?
Any CBAM introduced by Australia?
Well, there is no proposal.
I understand that.
And I think as it goes to the nature of the feedback that the Iozzo review has been encountering, Senator, I'd recommend that those questions be directed to Professor Iozzo in his review.
I was asking if your department, given the fact, let's go,
this is, just to be clear, it's an independent review process. So we haven't been managing that or seeking to insert ourselves into it in a direct way.
But if I put the other way around, a president of a country in the United States is talking about putting potential trade tariffs on other countries, and we are over there lobbying and saying we are concerned by this and this is what we want to do, and that is a hypothetical at the moment. Has any country come to your department and said they have concerns about Australia even considering or looking at this option?
Not to our knowledge, Senator. We can take that on notice if you wish. But
I'd like you to take that on notice.
And I'd sort of confirm that. I mean, I've been closely involved with the review from the start, and certainly not to my knowledge has any trading partner come and expressed concern along those lines.
Okay, that's good to know. I have a change if you want to change. Anyone up there? Or?
We don't need a change.
Okay. EU deforestation rules, if I may.
Go on, Ross, for now.
Given getting a little bit political, there was a co-signing of a matter of urgency in the Senate this year, by you, Senator, by Chair, about deforestation, about calling...
I did. I had a motion with...
Senator Canavan, I believe.
That's right. That's right.
For a delay in the implementation of the EU deforest regulation and the EU decision to postpone for 12 months. Has the government now been able to secure formal recognition of Australian land use and forest definitions within the UEDR?
Well, Senator, the first point to make here is that DAF is the lead on this issue in respect of the technical specifics. We have been working very closely with DAF. I will say that we have been working on two fronts. One is to advocate generally our views about the construction of the regulation. We think it could be much better constructed, better framed around risk and less unduly administratively burdensome. We also have been making some points about the specific situation in which Australia finds itself in the context of the regulation, the proposed regulation, as you say, Senator, and that includes to continue to advocate for a low-risk rating to reflect our status and to reduce the compliance burden on our industries.
Okay. Minister, have you had any discussions regarding this specific matter with the EU Commissioner for Trade?
I haven't spoken about any issue with the new EU Trade Minister since his appointment a few weeks ago.
We can confirm, Senator, that Minister Collins was able to raise with her counterpart Minister Collins raised it with EU Commissioner for Agriculture, Christoph Hansen.
Yep.
Our concerns along the lines that I just set out.
Right. Is action taken by the EU to update their global forest map, which incorrectly classifies parts of Australia? Do you know if steps are being taken there? There was some concern that green shade cloth was actually being picked up as forest in Australia.
Senator, I think the thrust of your question is exactly the direction in which our advocacy has been focused, but I'm not in a position, I'm sorry, to confirm whether the EU has actually responded in the way that you have just described. I think, again, given DAF's leading status on this issue, is best directed to them.
From your department, have you done an analysis, and I understand you go through, or done an assessment, let's not say an analysis, of how the EUDR will affect Australian exporters?
Again, Senator, the DAF portfolio is leading on analysis, and the Australian Bureau of Agriculture and Resource Economics has been working on this issue, and we know that they've been working on inconsistencies between the EU's data sets and our own, along the lines that you've just set out. So I think, again, best directing these questions to the DAF portfolio and ABS.
Fair enough. Are industry representatives talking to you as well as DAF, or they're only talking to DAF directly? Have you had direct concerns from industry representatives about this issue?
We can take that on notice, Senator. We would be surprised if they were not talking to us about this, but I'll have to take that on notice.
If I'm happy to take it on notice, if you take it on notice, can you say who and when, if that's possible? Thank you very much. Minister, do you intend to prevent the UDR from becoming a technical barrier to trade for Australia if it's implemented?
Yes.
Has the department, I don't want to know what the opinion is, but has the department formed a legal opinion or an opinion assessed whether the EUDR's treatment of Australian goods is consistent with WTA rules, given we want to go to a rules-based trade system?
We hopefully are well and truly within a rules-based trading system, Senator. And
we're leaving it quickly, but
one of the elements of your last question in relation to technical barriers to trade goes precisely to the kind of advocacy and representations that we've been making in Geneva on this issue. The WTO agreement on the technical barriers to trade is the framework through which we've been examining this regulation, along with other elements of WTO law. And Ms Holmes, our Chief Trade Law Officer, is here. Should you wish to talk in the general, we can't, as I said, talk more specifics, but in the WTO Technical Barriers to Trade Committee, we have also been emphasising very much the need for consistency with that body of law and this new proposed regulation.
And can I say, I appreciate very much. This is a big thing for people. Even the green shade coming up as forest, feedlots are coming up as woody feedlot on their EU mapping systems. It is very concerning to our people what they are doing. But thank you very much, and I think that's all I have in this section. But I think Senator Sharma has something.
Sorry,
Senator Sharma has something in this section, but I think I'm done.
Does he? He looks a bit surprised.
No, I'm ready to go. Could I just pick up on something though? You said. Minister, did you say you haven't spoken to the new EU Trade Commissioner yet, or encountered him?
I have not spoken to him.
You've written a letter or something?
I've congratulated him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you planning on, have you got a planned encounter, or is there a ministerial level meeting coming up? Or?
No, don't have any plans.
Okay. I just was wondering, I mean, do we touch on
the ball's in their court, right? So
in terms of
we made
the FTA.
We've made it very clear that we're happy to sit down at any time, at any place, and continue the negotiations for a free trade agreement. But it takes two to tango, and they have not come back to us since my last meeting with Trade Minister Dombrovskis, you know, they have to demonstrate to Australia that they are serious about negotiating a free trade agreement, because based on everything that they've offered us so far, I don't see any evidence yet that even with the change of Trade Commissioner, that the Europeans are seriously interested in a free trade agreement with Australia. I hope I'm wrong, Senator Sharma, but they have to demonstrate. You know, we said to them, you have to have a better offer for Australian farmers if you want a free trade agreement. They did not come back with a better offer. They have not come back with a better offer. And I'm not going to waste my time sitting down with people who are not serious about a free trade agreement.
Did you reiterate that expectation in your communication to the new Commissioner?
I would have been more polite, I'm afraid.
But you did express an interest.
I've explained to the EU ambassador on countless occasions in the last 18 months since negotiations broke down that we are willing to have further discussions, but there's got to be an acceptance. I mean, you look at how the world is going in terms of trade right now. I would have thought it was self-evidently in the interests of the Europeans to say to Australia, we want to sit down and keep these negotiations going and work out a deal. But I have not had an indication from them that that's what they want to do. The moment I do, I'll sit down and we'll resume negotiations. But there's no point doing what we've done on the two previous occasions, which is simply, you know, come to a stalemate. That's not in our interests, it's not in their interests. They have to make a decision that, given what's going on in the rest of the world, that they're serious about free trade. And if they are, we'll sit down and negotiate with them.
Thank you, Minister. And I just had a couple of questions about the market access provisions under a FTA with China, horticultural market access.
We'll do our best, Senator. As you know, these are also matters, biosecurity matters that are most likely the province of DAF, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, look, I'm probably not seeking a specific update, but an understanding of the process. So I understand, and forgive my layperson language here because I won't have the terminology correct, but we have a sort of rolling 2x2 market access process for horticultural goods with China.
Perhaps, again, Senator, we need to be pretty clear about our limitations of our competence here on biosecurity matters. But as you know, these free trade agreements are large umbrellas for economic cooperation across agencies, and they also entail an ongoing process of cooperation under committee structures. Now, Mr Kevaram and I have met our Chinese counterparts recently, and as recently as last year, to talk about a range of issues, but we did that with our DAF colleagues. Mm-hmm. So we're neither of us are really in a position tonight to talk about a two by two on horticulture, if that's what you want to delve into, unfortunately, Senator. But we can take some of this on notice if you wish.
Yeah, look, I guess I wanted to understand how the process works. Maybe I can articulate what I understand to be the process, and then you can correct me. So from what I understand, each country nominates 2 horticultural products for negotiation about market access, and I believe that Australia's 2 products in there are apples and blueberries, and China has, I'm not going to get this right, I'm afraid, juju berries or something, or...
Right.
Can anyone help me here on this one, Mr. Cutler?
Well, I doubt. I'm sorry, Senator, we're really out of our technical depth here. There may be questions relating to the resources applied to biosecurity market access request processes that are dictating this need for for a tight sort of 2x2, but DAFT biosecurity experts will be there.
Okay, but look, my concern at heart is that there seems to have been, I don't know if this is the result of a conscious decision by government or something else, the process had been that each country has nominated 2 goods. When one comes off, you can put another one on. So if apples are concluded, for Australia, for instance, we can nominate another product and that process can then begin with DAF's Chinese counterparts. It now seems to be, if I understand it correctly, that you now need to clear, it's no longer a rolling 2x2 process. You need to clear and conclude negotiations, market access negotiations for both. So apples and blueberries would both need to be concluded before Australia could nominate.
Yeah, I really ought not speak on behalf of DAF here. This sounds like a resource management issue in the biosecurity
and DFAT
coordinated
officials
approaches.
would not be involved in those.
We're engaged to convene. We're engaged to ensure that we do drive trade openness in the broad. We convene the committees and Mr Kevaram's division plays a whole of government coordinating role for a range of FTAs. But when it comes to individual access requests or even the resourcing of those access request management processes, exactly, it's a DAF call.
Okay. Look, I'll leave it there, but could I ask if you could take on notice whether this 2x2 market access process
Very happy to.
has changed from, I think, what is described as a rolling 2x2
Right. No, we'll
process.
consult with DAF and we'll come back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mann.
Just clearing up a few things. Just on the EU CEPA, can DFAT please list a provider of Australian agricultural industry stakeholders that was consulted with on that matter?
Just, if I may, Senator...
UAE.
UAE,
Yeah.
right.
Sorry. EU, sorry, my bad.
But I didn't know we had a CEPA.
So many bloody letters in this.
Just say
And the
UAE,
question-
free trade agreement. That's,
The question
everyone
again...
knows what you're talking about.
Question again, please, Senator.
Any agricultural industry stakeholders you consulted with?
How many?
Yep.
Across the negotiation of the
Yes,
of
please.
the entire agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look.
Take it on notice.
Thank you, Senator Ravi Kevaram, First Assistant Secretary, Free Trade Agreement and Stakeholder Engagement Division, and I also headed the UAE FTA negotiations. Senator, yes, we did engage with a wide range of agricultural bodies throughout the course of the negotiations. The complete list is attached to our the national interest analysis that was part of the J. Scott consideration.
Okay. We've had some feedback directly to us that industry felt the feedback wasn't strong enough or consistent enough. Did ALEC express a concern that they weren't consulted enough and that animal welfare people were consulted more than the industry?
Thank you, Senator. This was indeed a subject of ALEC's submissions/comments into the Joint Standing Committee hearing process with respect to animal welfare. And just to make clear that, well, 3 things. First of all, we consulted very, very broadly. So we start the consultations by calling for anyone who has an interest to come in and either put in a submission, which can be commercial in confidence, or to have individual chats and so on. So we did that in the UAE context, and there were a range of organizations that we spoke to very closely. Once the negotiations are underway, particularly with respect to things that are of direct interest to that industry. So, for example, wine industry, what are the things that you would see as a minimum? Same with the meat industry, same with agriculture more broadly. So the consultation process was very wide and broad, and as part of the consultation process and building on the outcome that had happened in the UK FTA process, where there had been a chapter on animal welfare, there were very clear submissions that had been put into that process that had indicated the expectation of segments of the community that wanted strong animal welfare provisions. Okay. Through the consultation process, we did discuss this, and views were put to us about making sure that it didn't go beyond what was in the UK context, but also views put to us that obviously we should seek to be as ambitious as possible. With respect to animal welfare specifically, and we have put this into the JSCOT process, we had a number of very broad stakeholder engagement processes as the negotiations were afoot, and we specifically mentioned at one of our meetings on the 14th of June 2024, where we talked about the fact that we were looking to have animal welfare provisions in the FTA, in the UAE FTA, and indicated that it was very likely that they would not go beyond what was in the UK FTA, but indicated that this was still subject of negotiation and discussion. ALEC was not at that meeting, and in our submission to JSCOT, we've made very clear that they were invited, but they were not at that meeting. But there was, as I say, throughout this process, a very clear expectation / anticipation / pressure that we would have animal welfare provisions.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
While Ravi's here, I think we should note the effort that Ravi went to get a free trade agreement in record time. In record time, no Australian agreement has ever been negotiated in the time frame that Ravi managed to negotiate the UAE trade agreement, and I think we should recognise that. And no sooner had he finished that agreement than he was on to a second agreement with India, and is making great progress in that regard.
It won't be as easy because I didn't spend 6 months in India like I did in the UAE, making it easy for him.
But can I say this? If people come to you and say, look, we haven't, had an opportunity to put our message across to government, my door is always open, and any time you want me to see any of your constituents about any of these issues, I'm always only too happy, especially for you, Senator Cadell, but also for you, Senator Sharma, if you've got some. If you've got some Europeans out there who reckon they want to do a free trade agreement, send them my way. But my door is always open. This government's door is always open. And if they've got complaints, well, come and tell me about them and I'll see if I can fix them. But let me say, this is one of the best free trade agreements, this UAE agreement, one of the best free trade agreements that Australia's ever negotiated. And we should be very proud as a country of what we've done. But if anybody's unhappy, get them to come and see me, because I haven't heard a single complaint either from the UAE or from any industry. I mean, don't forget, with wine, we've got the best deal.
Sounds a bit like Trumpish now.
I'm learning. I'm picking it up. It was after that convention. Oh no, wait a sec. That was the Democrats.
You should go over and see the president, Marty.
No, this is the best deal we've got. We should be very proud of it. In a time of really difficult trade issues around the world, we're kicking goals, Senator Cadell, and we will continue to do so.
Indeed. Senator Sharma?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick updates, if I could, on various free trade negotiation matters. Where are we up to with the GCC FTA? What's that status?
The GCC.
It's been going a while, I think.
Was that the only
Oh, and I've got one more as well on the CPTPP.
CPTPP?
GCC and CPTPP, if you want to.
We stay here,
CPTP.
Don't go anywhere.
Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Comprehensive.
CPTPP.
Used to be the
All right.
TPP.
Well, TCP, right? Used to be just the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Trans-Pacific Partnership under Obama. Now it's the CPTPP.
Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement.
All right. We'll go back to your
So
original question.
GCC, FTA, Mr. Inchbrown, good to see you again.
We obviously recently we've been, Rav and his team have been heavily preoccupied with the UAE negotiations. We've obviously looked at this with the GCC over quite a few years. There was a little flurry about 4 years ago when they expressed an interest again in doing an FTA with us. With 6 countries with varying degrees of ambition, it's obviously always been a challenging proposition, but we haven't never ruled it out. We're still accepting submissions on our website. Now that we've got the UAE negotiation done, we're starting to have another look at it. New Zealand obviously did an agreement. I mean, one of the issues we've always been aiming for an ambitious and high quality agreement, not just, getting an agreement done. So that's been a consideration. So we're now in the process of looking at it again, whether it is possible to take forward a high quality, ambitious agreement.
Is the New Zealand GCC agreement what we would consider to be
I think
high
we're
ambition or high
still
quality?
looking at it. It's quite a, I might defer to Mr. Quelron, but it's quite long term in terms of some of the tariff
the schedules
and reductions. So, I think we're still having a close look at it.
Mr. Cavalaran, did you want to?
Just on that.
Oh, okay.
From time to time, the issue gets raised. I think we are more likely to get individual countries in that group come to us and say the others aren't sufficiently ambitious. What about negotiating with us? And I think, to be honest with you, Senator Sharma, we're more likely to do agreements with individual countries than we are to get them all together. And I think some of them now, given what we've done with the UAE, regret not coming to talk to us a bit earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
The CPTPP, if I could.
Sure. Quick.
So we're taking over the chairing of that from next year, is that right?
This year.
This year, we're
I'm
currently
the
the chair. When? Now?
Already, yes.
And what's the program for our year of chairpersonship?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have the Canadian Trade Minister come and visit me the week before last, and we talked about this very topic. Canada had been the chair last year, and we wanted to talk about handover and all of those things, which we've now done. We'll have a couple of meetings, most likely in Australia, in the course of the year of the group. The big challenge is how we approach the issue of additional entrants into the scheme. I think we put Costa Rica through just before Christmas. So the sequence since I've been in this job, we've added the United Kingdom. That was mildly tortuous process, but we got there in the end. Costa Rica, it was a bit more of a smooth process. There's 6 or 7 countries out there who have indicated that they'd like to join. We need to work out a process of how we deal with those countries which would like to join us. Obviously, this is an agreement of very high standards that have to be met before you can come in, and it also requires consensus. Every country has to agree for a new country to come in. So in those circumstances, during the course of the year, we'll make progress on how we deal with those new countries coming in.
Okay. And with Costa Rica, just to clarify, have they actually been invited to join, or a working group has been set up to?
They applied.
Okay, yeah.
They applied in the usual. They were one of the early applicants. I'm not sure that they were the first applicant. They had the very strong support of former Senator Matthias Cormann. He was a very strong advocate on their behalf, and we were very happy to support their admission. They are, a very progressive country interested in free trade, and we were very happy to welcome them as part of the members.
But you're right, Senator. There is a process, an established process. There's an establishment of an accessions working group, and that both looks at the compliance of the applicant with rules in the agreement and also with market access separately.
So an accessions working group has been set up for Costa Rica?
Correct.
And what are the other countries that have expressed an interest in joining formally, or economies for that matter?
Thank you, Senator. So the list of applicants in alphabetical order: China, Ecuador, Indonesia, Taiwan, Ukraine, and Uruguay are the ones that have applied in addition to Costa Rica.
Okay. And do we expect, I'm particularly interested in Taiwan's application, flag here, do we expect that the CPTPP will consider that this year in Australia's chairing? I mean, obviously it depends on being able to reach a decision, but a consensus rather amongst the members, but is it expected that will be dealt with this year?
Well, as I said before, there's a process. Those countries, we're very pleased that Indonesia, for instance, recently took the step to indicate it would like to join. And we will go through the process that we've done with the United Kingdom, with Costa Rica, and appropriately consider all of the applications as has been established.
Is there any agreed hierarchy amongst those applications within the membership at the moment?
No, there's no.
There's not an agreement. Next cab off the
No agreement. No.
And if I can add to what the Minister has said, as he said, there's an ongoing process that is continuing to consider all of the applicants. But this year, in 2025, there is a real focus on trying to make sure we deal with the Costa Rican process expeditiously. And there are also, in fact, out of the Vancouver meeting that Canada hosted in November, there was a very busy agenda that was put forward for what we have to try and get done this year, considering future accession applicants, and moving that process along is part of that work as well, as is concluding the general review, considering other areas for CPTPP negotiation, etc.
Okay. Thank you. That was all the questions I had on.
Thank you very much.
I think that's it for.
That's it for the opposition. Okay, excellent. Now, I just had a couple of questions, if I can, on India. I know last night you mentioned earlier, Minister Farrell, that you, the Prime Minister, I think the Foreign Affairs Minister, attended or launched the new roadmap.
Yes, correct.
For Australia's economic engagement with India.
Yep.
And being from the good state of Victoria, a very large community from India, why is it so important for Australia to engage with India?
Well, we've got some officials who can give you that answer, and then I'll give my answer.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks, Senator. Sarah Story, First Assistant Secretary, South and Central Asia Division. Thank you for the question. Why did we do this roadmap? Because closer economic ties with India are very much in Australia's national interests. India is an essential partner, as the Prime Minister said last night at the launch, as we diversify our economic and trade links. India's economy is projected to be the third largest by 2030. It's already the world's most populous country, and it's growing in ways that is complementary to our economy. So thanks to our first FTA with India, the Economic and Cooperation and Trade Agreement, India is already our fifth largest export market. And the new roadmap for Australia's economic engagement with India takes stock and aims to focus and accelerate our efforts based on over 400 consultations in every state and territory and in India, and receiving over 70 submissions. Many of them were from the Indian Australian diaspora, who, numbering nearly 1 million, are certainly the engine as the living bridge between our nations with their unique connections. As the Prime Minister also said, the roadmap is critical to helping us fully realise our potential in India, which will be a boon to our economy, to our business, and for our jobs and prosperity. The Trade Minister said it's a blueprint for Australian business, focusing on 4 superhighways of growth. They are clean energy, education and skills, agribusiness and tourism. There are 47 action points in the roadmap, and there are cross-cutting sub-sectors as well, namely including investment, technology and IT, space, sports, arts and culture, defence and health. The roadmap also came with the announcement of a $16 million India Trade Investment Accelerator Fund and $4 million extending the Centre for Australia-India Relations Maitree Grants program.
That's great news, Minister.
It was a very well attended function last night.
Shame I couldn't be there. I was stuck here in estimates.
Well, our
I was invited,
member
actually.
for Chisholm was there, Karina, and she was very well received.
A very fine local member.
By the local Indian community. But, I mean, I'm starting to repeat myself here a little bit, but given the uncertainties in world trade right now, India represents a wonderful opportunity for us. But it's one thing to have, words on a piece of paper. It's another to convert those words into practical results for Australian businesses. There's a huge opportunity there in India. Australian business has to grab it. We'll help them, but they've actually got to do the effort. They've got to go over there, start the discussions. People say, oh, well, it's hard to do business in India, but, people used to say that 30 years ago about China. The opportunities are there. We simply have to take them, and we have to... In some way, I see my job as pushing businesses out the door and into India. We've got a fantastic Indian diaspora here, very hard-working people, young people, enthusiastic people, very switched on in terms of space and new technology and all of those things. We have a wonderful opportunity, and we need to grab it with both hands.
And what are the sort of Australian businesses that you and your department expect that will benefit from the greater economic engagement with India?
Yeah, well, obviously, if we get a new free trade agreement, then that opens up a whole lot of other opportunities, particularly in agriculture. But I think it doesn't matter where you look. The Trade Minister came to the Clare Valley, and I'm told he hasn't stopped talking about Australian wine since he got back into India. Obviously, that's an opportunity for us. While he was in Adelaide, we took him to Lot 14 to see some of the work we're doing on space. They're very interested in space, and of course, there's a company called Fleet. I don't know if you know about Fleet, but they make little products, spacecraft that are full of antennae. They send them up into space on a Elon Musk rocket. Somebody goes out from Adelaide in a Hilux. They put down 4 pegs in an area which they think is prospective for lithium. And as that satellite goes over, it sends down all these waves and and tells you whether there's any lithium and how much lithium is under the ground.
Oh, wow.
And he was very interested in that technology. South Australia, as you know, is the space state, and doing great jobs in space. And of course, that's one particular area, Senator, where I think we can do a lot more with India.
Well, I wouldn't want to speak ill of the great state of South Australia, given where you're from, and a very fine Premier indeed there. Could I just ask one other thing? Has the government committed any additional resources to help deliver on this initiative?
Yes, Senator.
Story?
Yes, Senator. As mentioned earlier, there's been an announcement of $16 million over 4 years, commencing in 25-26 for the Australia-India Business Accelerator, the Accelerator Fund, in fact, and $4 million extending over the same period around the extending the Matri grants, which will enable that connectivity and the collaboration pieces.
Excellent. Well, that's a good news story. And on behalf of the committee, also want to say thanks to Ravi. I know you, all your work as well, being the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends of the United Arab Emirates. I know what you and your team, Story and others, do a fine job at making sure that we can continue to export the finest things that come out of this great country. And on behalf of the committee, I want to say thank you, Mr. Mena, to you, to Mr. Ravi, your team, Sarah as well, and everyone else that's watching tonight. So well done. Now, on that note, Minister, happy to release the department. There are no other questions.
I endorse your
10 seconds early.
thanks.
Well, I take that. That's a win. So good night, everyone. We are now going to get ready with the Export Finance Australia. Just suspend and we'll get ready. Yeah, sure. Okay, I now would like to welcome Export Finance Australia. Hello to the Acting Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer. Hello. Did you have an opening statement this evening? No. Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll hand the call over to Senator Sharma, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I have some questions about the government's support to Psi Quantum. Won't surprise you. Can you give me a status report on what funding has been provided to Psi Quantum so far?
Sure, Senator. So the convertible note, the equity...
Sorry, just get you to read out your full name.
Sorry, Amanda Copping. Sorry,
That's
Senator.
all right.
Amanda Copping, Acting Chief Executive Officer and MD. Sorry, Senator.
No, that's all right.
Consistent with the response that we gave at the last Senate estimates, the convertible note has been issued, and that's $125 million US. Then there are two loan components of that transaction, and I can confirm that those two loans have not been drawn down yet.
Those are the 200 million and the 75 million loans, is that right?
Senator.
Okay. So the convertible note has not been converted to equity?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have an expectation of when that will occur?
Senator, as you would appreciate, there is an agreed conversion mechanism and conditions precedent that are required as part of that, and those need to be satisfied, and that mechanism needs to happen, and that hasn't happened yet. That is in the hands of the company.
Is it the government, though, that makes the decision about whether those conditions precedent are met?
Yes, as in line with our normal practices, Senator, yes.
Okay. Is that Export Finance Australia? Is that you that makes that decision?
It is as part of our responsibility and for administering the transaction on a commercial basis.
Okay, so you'll make the decision about when the conditions are met and when the convertible note can be converted to equity. Okay. And what's the interest rate on the convertible note?
So the interest rate on the convertible note, Senator, is 5.12%.
5.12%, okay. And then, thank you for that. Turning to the loans, so you said, did you say correct that neither of the loans has been drawn down yet?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have an expectation of when that might occur, and are there also conditions precedent?
That is correct. There are conditions precedent and a series of agreed milestones that form part of the consideration, and those need to occur before any drawdown can occur under both those loans, Senator.
Okay, and what are those milestones around? I mean, the state of technology or?
Yeah, so broadly they're around the technology and infrastructure milestones. However, Senator, though the actual milestones and the CPs to draw down are commercial in confidence.
Okay. Is there a time, like an expiry or a date by which the loans must be drawn down or the credit line is no longer available? Do they expire?
Yes, Senator, I'll have that is commercial in confidence, okay. And I'm unable to answer that.
Okay. The infrastructure milestones, are they? They're building a facility adjacent to Brisbane Airport. Is that right? Are they required? Is that to do with the state of progress of that facility?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Would we expect the loans to be drawn down this year, 2025, this calendar year?
Senator, the company has publicly said that they, expect the facility to be completed by the end of 2027. So that is the ultimate milestone that they're working towards.
Okay. And I believe I wasn't here for this, but at last estimates, I presume from you, there was advice given that an independent technology assessor would be appointed to assess the level of technology development in order for the loans to be drawn down. That's correct?
Yes, as is typical for complex projects financings like this, we appoint an independent assessor ahead of any milestone and CP certification ahead of drawdown. And so yes, there is an ITA. The ITA EFA has appointed in conjunction with QIC, who is and that forms part of the financing documentation, Senator.
So the ITA has been appointed?
Yes.
Chosen, gone through a process, whatever else?
Yes,
okay.
Senator.
Okay. What are their qualifications? You don't need to specify them, just in the broad, specify their name rather. But
Senator, I will have to take that one on notice and provide you with some details.
And have they commenced any work? Have they started doing any technology assessments?
Similarly, I'll have to take that one on notice, Senator.
Okay. I mean, will you be able to provide advice on that, or is that commercial involvement?
I will defer to my General Counsel on whether that's covered by the commerciality provision.
Thanks. Felicity Shaw, General Counsel of Export Finance Australia. So the confidentiality regime in the financing agreements is very broad, and it could cover these arrangements. So I would need to check and take on notice the extent of that regime.
Okay. Thank you. I'd appreciate it if you did. And it's my understanding that PsyQuantum will also need to raise capital in the private markets. When do we expect that to take place?
Given the nature of that company, that we expect there'll be ongoing capital raisings over the life of the project.
Have they raised any capital privately since this deal was announced?
They haven't announced any additional capital raising yet, as far as I'm aware, Senator.
Okay, they haven't been doing a roadshow or anything?
But they have publicly said that they are in conversations with potential investors.
Okay. And then if you could just explain to me, I understand there was a $91.2 million accounting loss reported for the financial year ending 30 June on the national interest account associated with the PsyQuantum deal. Can you just explain what that loss is and what it accounts for?
Yes, so Senator, the $91 million is the accounting loss across the national interest account and number of transactions, and it's the accounting treatment that is required under Australian accounting standards for transactions on the national interest account. It's not a cash loss.
And it's not specific to the PsyQuantum deal, it's across all transactions?
No, my understanding is it is across both the PsyQuantum transaction and also the Digicel transaction.
Okay. That's the Papua New Guinea telecommunications provider, right, that Telstra's provided?
Yes, yes, okay. Senator.
Sorry, and you just said before, so it's not a cash loss, it's an accounting loss?
Yes.
Can you just explain that a little bit for me?
Look, accounting is not my area
not mine
of expertise,
either.
Senator.
That's why I'm asking you.
So if I may, we're happy to provide some more information on that particular accounting standard and the requirement to account for it that way.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then just finally on this, has Export Finance identified any risks in the last 6 months to this project that you've needed to brief government about?
Senator, we haven't formally briefed government in relation to any particular risks that have arisen on this transaction since the last Senate estimates.
Okay. And is that because your risk assessment remains the same?
Obviously, as a transaction evolves, it will never be exactly the same day one, day two, but there are no material changes at this point to the risk assessment that we made for investment.
For your information,
yeah, of course, Minister.
Senator Cadell asked me earlier about some of the things I did in Chicago in August. One of the things I did was visit the site of the PsyQuantum building in just south of Chicago. There appeared to me a great deal of enthusiasm for the project, and everything I read about what's coming out of the United States right at the moment in this space gives me great confidence that this will be a terrific project when it gets up and running.
I hope you're right, Senator Farrell. Sorry, and just finally on the accounting loss on the national interest account, on notice as well, if you need, are you able just to allocate how much of that is to the PsyQuantum deal and how much is to the Digicel, attributable to the Digicel deal, if you need to take that on notice? All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think Senator Cadell.
He's smiling, so is he done?
No.
I thought you were smiling because
No.
Thank you.
I have today learned this line of questioning. This could be either the shortest because you can't answer them at all, or the longest questioning part. I heard a great story about the Iraq Funds Distribution Project, going back for the Australian Wheat Wars allocation of funds that EFIC took over after the fall of the Saddam Hussein and the Paris group of companies.
Do we have knowledge on that if I start getting that?
I don't have knowledge, Senator. That
be a
may
short
be a
night.
little bit before
It could be very short.
our time, but certainly...
So my understanding, and I am learning this today, so it's a journey of learning together if we ask these questions on. My understanding is EFIC took the majority of growers' losses after the collapse of the Saddam Hussein and the thing. They paid out 80% of the balance of growers' debts. That was somewhere around $480 million at the time in today's dollars. And that money is still coming in under that repayment arrangement, and some funds may be in trust. Do you know if any funds are in trust coming from that via either yourselves or Ernst? I'm told Ernst & Young is managing a program for AAPI that, under your guidance.
Senator, I might defer to our Chief Credit Officer if you have anything to add. Otherwise,
I'm not going to be adamant that that is the case, but I'll take it on notice.
Take it on notice.
Yeah, John Pacey, Chief Credit Officer. We do have an exposure to Iraq on our national interest account and a small exposure on our commercial account. And there's a short summary in our annual report on page 85. But in particular to your question on that trust issue, I'll have to take that on notice.
Right. With that, do you know if that exposure to Iraq is specifically over this Australian Wheat Board old income, or it could be something else?
We might have to. We'll check that. We wouldn't want to mislead you, Senator.
I am happy to put these questions on notice.
If you could, that'd be awesome. I think they would appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right. Well, on that note, good evening. You're free to go.
Thank you.
There was 2 pages of questions, but
they all got collapsed into it. I'll just write to you about it. I'll take it on notice. Okay, we're now going to get ready with...
I just might note that the reason Ms Copping is representing Export Finance here today is because Mr Hopkins is at the Super Summit with the Ambassador Rudd and a couple of hundred other Australian companies doing some investment work in the United States.
Excellent.
All right. On the United States stuff, is Chicago being built? Have they started building the building in Chicago?
I'm not sure. I'll find out for you, Senator.
Now, can we get the Australian Trade and Investment Commission to the table?
Oh, you
visited it.
I visited it?
Yeah,
that's what I said.
Was there anything there? You said it was impressive, so it must be there. Is it a finished facility in Chicago?
No, it's not.
Okay. No. So what was impressive about it then?
The site. The
size of the site.
Good block of land.
The serenity. Oh, the blueprints.
It's a beautiful site.
Yeah, that's not the only technology.
All right. Are we going to straight to the table quickly, please? All right, I'd now like to welcome the Acting Chief Executive Officer of AUSTRADE, the Australian Trade Investment Commission, and officers of the agency. Good evening, Mr Boyer. Have you got an opening statement for us tonight?
I do, Chair, but in the interests of keeping you on side, I'm happy to table it.
That would be very wise. So we'll happy to table it. We'll get it circulated. We'll make many copies for anyone in the room that wants one, and we'll give that to senators immediately. I'm going to hand the call over now to Senator Cadell with questions.
Thanks very much. From the payment rounds of EMGG, are we now seeking to recover debts from the EMGG rounds?
I'll pass to my colleagues, Ms Williams and Ms Hamilton, to answer questions on this.
Thank you, Senator. I will pass to my colleague, Ms Goonich, on this.
Lucky I'm a rugby league fan and it's a good backline move, but that's it. Keep going.
Good evening. Norma Goonich, Acting Head of Client Program. Senator, could you please repeat a question?
Are we EMDG as a group collecting debts from previous rounds? Are we seeking debt recovery actions against people who didn't comply or who haven't met? Or
yes, we are. Senator Cadell, thank you for the question. We are following the standard procedures of debt recovery in the EMDG program. So I can report that we've been working with grantees who did not spend as planned under the milestone reports to offset those unspent grants against the future payment under the existing grant agreement. So far, we have made payments of $400 million across the 3 rounds of the grant program, and we have 107 grantees who Just bear with me, I'm trying to find the figure. 107 grantees who have been issued invoices to repay the unspent grant funds, and that value is 1.39 million. We are also entering into repayment plans with some of those grantees, and that is working well. Those that are not under repayment plans, the invoices are issued, and we are following up regularly for that to be repaid.
Okay. Which rounds are they from? 1, 2 and 3, or
that is
all of them?
All of them, across all the tiers, yes.
And how much has been recovered? We're seeking 1.39 million. Yes. How much has been recovered to date?
To date, 188,000.
Okay. Moving on to round 4, I've had some comments that the system crashed. Is that true? The portal crashed for round 4?
No, Senator, but I'll pass to Ms Williams to take you through what actually happened.
Okay.
Dara Williams, Deputy CEO, Policy and Programs. Senator, we had no portal outages during the opening of round 4, but my colleague, Ms Chalmers, will be able to provide more information on that.
Okay.
Acting General Manager, Digital and Technology. We did not have any portal crashes. We did have some reported incidents come through. Yeah, there are about 40 people who logged incidents. Most of those, the majority, had already pre-populated forms before the round had opened. And so on that basis, we had seen that before the round opened, so we had communicated with all of those people that we would remove that data because it's a first in, first served basis.
So it's a cleanse,
we didn't want them to have that advantage, yes.
Okay.
Outside of that, there was internet coverage was the other issue.
Which happens. Okay, so is that all 40, sorry, when you said other than that, it was of the 40 complaints, how much were pre-populating and wiping and how much was internet, do you know?
I don't have the exact breakdown, but from memory, it was the vast majority.
Right, was pre-population.
Correct.
Okay. So most of those people were communicated, all of it, most/all were communicated with prior?
Prior to, that's
and
right.
And post, have they accepted that or?
I think people were frustrated because it was a long form, and I think that obviously put some effort in ahead of time. But I think that people can acknowledge that everybody should have that same starting position. So for those people that did pre-populate, we archived the data, we emailed them ahead of time to let them know that that had happened. Some people then found a latency in the system because the system knew that there was data and it was looking for it. Right. And so there was a bit of a loop there. But we did phone all of those people and resolve those issues.
Okay. I think on Tier 2, it was open for about 4 hours. Correct. On the first in, first served basis. From a perspective of me, are we concerned that we're getting back to the thing where people with good lodgement are beating people with good projects? That people who are prepared and got it in there and good IT, third parties that can lodge on their behalf, are we missing out on good projects on that Tier 2 because it is first served first? I think there was a lot of applications. I don't know there's a better way to do it. I'm just trying to work out.
Senator, I think this was the first time, obviously, that we had run the EMDG program in this way, and we were, it was. We were aware that there might be differing levels of demand. So yes, you're correct that the round was open for Tier 2. We closed it after 3.5 hours.
3.5 was it? Yeah, okay.
3.5, yeah. So it opened at 10 a.m. on the 12th of November and closed at 1:30. Obviously, it was a judgment call as to when we would close that, and we continued to monitor the demand across all the tiers and finally made the judgment call to close round 4 entirely on the 20th of December. So I think there are opportunities to reflect on that experience, and but I think at this stage we are going through the process of assessing the applications. Right. We're seeing some very good applications. We're about halfway through the assessments at this stage, and Senator, we are seeing more than doubling of the average size of the grants, which was the purpose of the EMDG refocus. So I think we are seeing the effect that we were seeking in making the reforms to the program.
Okay. coming back to some of the words you said at the beginning, you think we're reflecting upon that process. Is there a working group? Is there a task force looking at the process of the tier 2s and that first come, first served pseudo environment, or it's just an internal reflection when we look for the next round?
Yeah, there's no working group, Senator.
Okay. What, there's been talk about buffer applicants, a number over. What do we have a target percentage over a buffer? Is there a number or?
Well, Senator, as you're aware, there were allocations, estimated allocations made against each of the tiers, and we were quite clear publicly from August when we put out the guidelines and consistently in the lead up to opening the round that we would be taking a high number of applications just to take account of ineligible applications and the possibility of offered grant agreements not being accepted. And so I think it was a judgment call. The demand, as you've said, across tier 2 was high, and so we made a judgment call after 3.5 hours. Of course, when we're looking at the entire allocation for EMDG, that will be going across all of the 4 tiers, there is scope to reallocate across the tiers.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So on that tier 2 and 3 level, it seemed most oversubscribed. Was there an expectation of how many you would get in each tier? Because I think you got 1,148 tier 2, 914 tier 3. Is that right?
That's correct.
Was there an expectation of how many you would get in those in the department prior, or accept?
Jessica Hamilton,
Yep.
I'm the Acting General Manager for Visitor Economy and Client Programs. We did take the maximum allowable grant amount for each tier and divide that by the amount of money that was available against each tier, and that was the total number of forecasted grants. That we wanted to manage expectations, but you are correct that we did exceed that number. Applicants are able to choose for funding for 1 year or both of those years. So we've received a mixture of applications from grantees for different time periods.
Okay. Enough of moving on. The impact assessment of Australia's EMDG program and trade services report is delayed. Is that correct? You put out an RFQ in August 23, listed final report to be 18th December 2023.
Senator, are you referring to the Swinburne University report?
Is that a Swinburne? Yeah, well, I don't know who did it. I've just got, I've shorthanded the impact assessment of Australia's EMDG program and trade services report. If Swinburne University got it,
Yes, that one was commissioned in 2023, yes.
Yeah. And it's dated, so it was due on 18th December 2023, but it was dated June 2024, I think the final one?
Yes, Senator.
Why was that later? Was there a reason or?
So the research was conducted over 8 months, from October 2023 to June 2024. I think they were the...
Sorry,
I think that was the expected timeframe.
I thought it on the website when I was going through it, and it might be my reading, that's why I'm just trying to ascertain. I thought the final report date was originally 2023.
So I think if we're talking about the Swinburne University report, it was commissioned in 2023.
What date?
I would need to take that on notice.
Okay, and there was 8 months of
Yes.
Okay. Which would be why it's 2024.
So with the research starting in October 2023 and concluding in June 2024.
Okay. Happy. Was there any draft iterations before the final document? Was there to you that you implemented changes on from Swinburne, or did you accept the document as it was?
Senator, not that I am aware of.
I'm happy for you to take it on notice, but if there was a draft document, can I get tabled the first draft of that document and so I can see the changes between that and
we can take that on notice, Senator.
Okay.
Yes.
Minister, did your office have any input in the final Swinburne report document?
Yeah. I'll have to find out for you, Senator Cadell, and I'll come back to you.
Okay. And when you got it in June, at the end of you said the research ended in June. Is that when you got that final report?
Yes, Senator, that's my understanding.
Okay, and what was the cost in the end for Swinburne?
The cost of the report was $139,976.
It's very specific. I like that. I've got to go down to it.
What was that?
I've got to get onto it.
Live sheep export, Senator?
No, that was the actual one, but I've skipped that. Simplified trade system, my favourite stuff.
It could have been either.
Who won the bet?
Senator, my office advised me that they don't think we did, but we will check the email records to make sure that's the correct answer.
Okay. Has there been any changes since my FO 24-25 to the expenditure table for the simplified trade system?
Senator, thank you for your question. Daniel Curtis, Acting General Manager, Simplified Trade, Communication and Marketing.
We're on a first name there. You don't need to call me Senator now.
Since my EFO 23-24, Senator, so there was an investment in the budget 2024-25 process of $29.9 million.
Okay. Updating the budget, that's in the income. On the expenditure table, is there a change since my FO 24-25?
So I believe we provided on notice after the budget estimates an updated table which had our total expenditure over all budget processes at $497.9 million, and there have been no changes since we last provided.
So that is the last one is there, okay.
Yes, Senator.
Of that $497 million, how much has been appropriated to Austrade?
To Austrade, Senator. So over, if we look at as you'd recall, the Simplified Trade System Implementation Task Force was appropriated through Austrade. Yep. So if we include the task force and then Austrade proper over that period, the total is 73.46.
Is that broken down into Austrade and STS task force separately?
Because the task force didn't have a separate appropriation, that's through.
Okay, with that. Department of Agriculture.
The Department of Agriculture over the period, over all budget periods since 2020-21. Has received a total of $265.48 million, Senator.
Okay. And Department of Home Affairs?
$141.4 million.
Any lower than 146 IT systems yet?
No, Senator. We, as best I know, we have.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's a bad question. I would not to ask that one.
Just ignore him.
Yeah, that's right. On that, I want a question on notice number 359, and I'll go to that if I've got it here. Dates of tripartite ministerial meeting regarding simplified trade system. The first meeting of the ministerial committee was scheduled for the 10th of October 2024. Did that meeting happen?
So, Senator, that meeting did take place.
Okay.
However, Minister Burke was unable to attend on that day. There was a subsequent meeting with Minister Burke on the 11th of November.
See, we're there. You know the next question already. We're great friends.
Sound over your list.
Yeah, that's right. So just with Minister Burke, not the it was just on the, okay, the next day, so the 11th of October.
11th of November, Senator.
I thought the meeting in this question says 10th of October.
So there was the meeting was scheduled for the 10th of October.
Yep.
However, Minister Burke... the meeting didn't take place as expected, and so there was a subsequent meeting with Minister Burke on the 11th of November.
Okay. Right. So, and that, I just want to get that right. Minister with Minister Burke and the other ministers, it wasn't just by himself, it was all three?
No, I understand the 11 November meeting was Ministers Farrell and Burke.
And not Minister Collins?
That's my understanding, Senator.
Any recollection, Minister Farrell? I'm okay to take it. I know I'm getting there. It's pre-Christmas. We've all had a rough one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what direction you're heading here, Senator.
I just want to get if the three ministers have met as part of this program.
To make progress.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we've certainly met. And we've certainly had lots of discussions. I have to say, this is one of the hardest tasks I've had in the 3 years of government, getting all of the various departments to work together to make progress. I recently had a meeting with Paul, the former chair, Paul.
Mr. Little.
Hey?
Mr.
Paul Little.
Little.
Paul Little. Yeah, former chairman
Toll.
former Toll, former president of Essendon for his sins, look, I just wish we'd made more progress, but can I assure you, Senator, that in our next term we will make significant progress.
Well, I would hope by 2050 it's over.
It's not going to take that long. But look, it's a case. I mean, it's easy to be siloed in government, and it's my objective to break down the silos, get everybody working in the same direction, and I know that that's what Minister Burke wants, and I know that's what Minister Collins wants. We just have to, I mean, in this job, you've just got to push. You've just got to push and push and push until you get the result you want, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Sure, the next 12 trade ministers that deal with this will do the same. So, of the tripartite meetings, we haven't had one where all three ministers have been there yet, even though there's been two meetings. We've had two bipartite meetings.
Not in that format, Senator, but I think as the ministers noted, ministers meet and discuss matters including STS regularly.
Yeah. Is there another meeting of the tripartite group scheduled?
There's not one currently scheduled, Senator.
Let's move on from that subject to your previous subject on sheep meat, shall we? Sheep meat.
Encourage Mr. Meek to the table.
Yes.
Mr. Meek. What'd you say?
Mr. Meek, that's his name.
Oh, Meek.
Yes.
Mr. Meat. I know it's 9 o'clock at night, but that was funny though. Mr. Meek, welcome.
In November last year, you gave us a general overview of events and activities of expenditure of the increase in demand aimed at increasing Australian meat. How is expenditure tracking on those planned activities?
So, Jay Meek, General Manager for Trade. So our expenditure as of December 30 is only $276,000, but I should actually highlight that most of the activity is happening in this financial year.
Okay.
So the costs associated, for example, with our China event and our Japan event and Gulf Foods, which happened last week, which I attended, will come rolling in the last half of the financial year.
Did you have a budget for like quarter on quarter of this first quarter expenditure?
So we have an annual budget of expenditure, and what we're doing is rolling out against events, and obviously we have to adjust as those events sort of relate to the meat industry.
Yeah. So what will you have spent by the end of this financial year?
So I think we're aiming for approximately, if I can get the number for you, at the end of the financial year, total cost of $2,958,000 and so $2,958,239.
Very specific. If you do that, I'll be very impressed.
So will I.
That's right. How much is being retained by Austrade to administer the activities rather than the activities themselves? Anything, or is it?
So we have a small percentage for administration of funds, and I might actually turn to a percentage to our Chief Operating Officer if I was to put her on the spot.
Thanks. Melissa Woodburn, Chief Operating Officer. I will have to take that one on notice, Senator.
Okay. But it's a percentage of allocated funds overall?
Yeah, there's a template that's used in terms of when you bid for the money, and so it's basically a percentage. So I'll get that for you.
Okay. the 9 million, the implementation approach says 9 million, Austrade will not only grow exports of sheep meat, but will also assist more Australian agri-food exporters to grow or diversify their exports into the Middle East and agri-markets. Just my concern is there seems to be some bracket creep there. We've got a meat fund and is expending out. Is there a reason for that? How do we make sure sheep meat guys are the focus of this all the way through?
So, Senator, maybe if I give you a practical example of last week in the Middle East. So we attended the world's largest food show, Gulf Foods. There was an Australian stand with agri-food products or food products on that.
Yep.
And equally there was a stand with the Meat and Livestock Australia, who we partner with 35 red meat exporters at that. And so it's actually about the balance of getting both. And maybe if I could bring it to life for you, and I believe the Minister refers to the Woolworths of distribution as an example.
I did hear that today, yeah.
Is that supermarket chains such as Spinneys and Lulu's in the UAE, who have footprints obviously in Dubai but right across into South Asia, are very much looking at a portfolio of Australian products that include meat and also other things as part of that.
Okay, and I don't have a problem per se with what you say. It's an economy of scale or size to have both of those guys. But would the other agri-foods have another fund to have attended if it just wasn't coming from this fund, this sheep meat fund?
Most of the funds that came for that event were self-paid by those businesses that are non-red meat. So in other words, they pay for participation at Gulf Foods.
Most of?
The majority of them, by far.
Okay. Just in a broader sense or anything specific, if you know, if the money's rolling out this finance, what's the next biggest thing? Like Gulf Foods is big, what else is next coming up?
Yeah, so, and maybe just to put it in context, we're about 4.78 billion in terms of sheep meat exports at the moment. And I know that was covered off in the previous session, but it's obviously hitting at a fairly peak high, or more than a peak high. And what we're doing. And so we have Gulf Foods that's just completed. We've got coming up next is FoodX in Japan in the 11th to 14th of March. We've got the International Food Expo in London on the 17th to the 19th of March. And we've got Food and Hotel Asia in Singapore on the 8th to the 11th. That's a list of some larger ones, and the list goes on.
Okay, no, happy with it. If you've got a list, would you be able to table that after?
Yep, happy to do that.
We heard my friend from Western Australia going on about specifically Western Australia. Is there anything we're doing extra for Western Australian sheep meat growers, or is it the industry as a whole?
So Austrade entered into a trade start partnership with the Great Southern Development Agency to put a trade start person in the Great Southern region.
All right.
And that person is obviously meeting with the red meat exporters, but also the broader community there in terms of meat processors and others, about how and what those opportunities are for particularly sheep meat.
Yep.
And that's probably the key behind making sure farmers are aware of what opportunities exist.
I think this is embarrassing when you think things in it might be wrong. Was it November you said that we're looking at a cooperation, you mentioned MLA, a cooperation agreement with MLAs to avoid duplication. Has that happened?
Yep, so we have a partnership agreement with the MLA, and probably to be clear is that the Meat and Livestock Australia promote broadly red meat. We play a role in the B2B element. Of helping individual businesses, and there are approximately about 300 sheep meat exporters in Australia. The top 10 would probably move 90+% of that meat. And for example, at Gulf Foods, we were heavily working with all of those businesses on opportunities where we're seeing great growth.
My new most annoying questions to most people in departments is, what does success look like? It's putting you on the spot. We're at 4.78, I think you said now. Have we got a goal in mind by a certain time, or it's just a general thing?
Well, I think the objective is to get growth, and I think, as I previously mentioned, Senator, it is actually based on supply.
Yep.
And that's the balance, is that obviously Australia is a farming nation. We have rain, we don't have rain.
Western Australia flocks down by 25%.
And had an incredibly strong drought. But what you actually need to do in a success for me is making sure we're providing the signalling to red meat exporters and to the broader farming community of the opportunities that exist in India, which has grown 400% from 22 to 24. You know, I think the UK went around 14% in the last financial year, and the Middle East that we just talked about.
Okay, that's good. My one political question in all this, if we are shortly near an election, if the government was to change, given our policy, is the ability to step up and re-promote live trade part, can we do this, or can we not do that?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't answer a hypothetical,
okay,
Senator, but I would say that Austrade has a long history of being able to pivot pretty quickly, especially on the trade side.
That is a beautiful answer, and I'll accept that. I'm happy to rotate, or I've got more.
Oh, I was about to move on to our next witness, but
I'm a leader as well. Everyone loves these standard questions on these same subjects over and over again.
So I'm in your hands, Senator Cadell. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep asking, or do we want to?
No, here I am.
The witnesses?
What oversight has Austrade got on the leader currently?
On what?
New person, same person. Hey, Daniel.
Senator, so thank you for your question. So model law on electronic transferable records, or MOLITA, which, as you know, Attorney General's Department is delivering as part of the Simplified Trade System Regulatory Reform Roadmap. We meet fortnightly with Attorney Generals, and our last meeting was on the 25th of this month.
Okay. I had a Quan. I'm just getting the Quan number here, if I get it for you. Date of most recent advice from Attorney General's on MOLITA and its progress was a question I noticed of the last estimates. And that was the same question I asked there. We went through and I said, what dates are you going? But you're saying every 2 weeks or every...
It's fortnight. I mean, it probably not over the Christmas period, but generally fortnightly. So in this month, we've met on the 11th and the 25th. So it's a very regular engagement with Attorney Generals, and of course they're leading the reform work. But because we have a lot of the connections into business with states and territories, we make sure that they're able to have those conversations.
And so you would be inputting advice rather than working on a program?
That's correct, Senator.
And the advice comes at those fortnightly meetings, or is there written correspondence in between those meetings, or?
No, it is through those fortnightly meetings, Senator.
I think that's all I will go on, MOLITA. I think we're heading down a very similar hole. Thrive. There is one day in February, according to my calculation. Will the Strategy Phase 2 Action Plan be released tomorrow by the end of February 2025, as was scheduled?
Thank you for your question, Senator. We have been working to finalise the Phase 1 report. I am pleased to report that we had set ourselves recovery targets that we've exceeded for the recovery of the visitor economy through that phase, but we are yet to finalise and publish the Phase 1 report.
When will it be published?
The release of that publication is a matter for the Minister.
Okay, understood. Has it been supplied to the Minister?
Yes, it has. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Every question I've got about a revised timeline is really not up to you then. Have you been asked to consider or commence any work on updating the entirety of the Thrive plan as an outcome of the report so far?
Our work at the moment is on supporting and continuing the implementation of the strategy. Many of the actions that we undertook as part of that recovery phase were actually foundational, and we continue to work on those around sustainability, accessibility, and to build a resilient, diversified visitor economy here in Australia. We have conducted extensive consultation with industry as well as across the states and territories, developing an action plan for the consolidation phase of Thrive 2030, which we are working on at the moment.
When you meant the recovery target, is that in numbers or dollars?
It's in dollars. So we had set ourselves a $166 billion target for the recovery of the visitor economy by the conclusion of phase one.
Total visitor spend?
Total visitor spend. We achieved $211 billion visitor spend. Pleasingly, we had set a target of $70 billion, which we exceeded to deliver $80 billion to regional Australia.
Thank you.
That's a terrific result, by the way, Senator Cadell.
Oh, maybe. I'm just doing some maths in my head what inflation has been. I'm just really trying to...
Always a downer.
If he wants to get involved, I've got to play it back. You know how it is. Okay, so those numbers are up and over. How many staff do Australia have working on the visitor economy team?
Senator, I would have to take that question on notice.
Okay, second part, if you can see how many we are and how that's changed over 12 and 18 months, that would be very helpful.
Yes, we can do that on notice, Senator.
Thank you, Chair.
There, I've just noticed your phone, when it buzzes, that reverberates throughout the whole room.
Thank you, Chair.
Anyway, you're welcome, Senator Cadell. Good evening, everyone. You can go home now.
Well, just before they leave, can I just thank Mr. Boyer for stepping up as the head of
Thank you.
The department and coming in at an extremely difficult time, but doing a terrific job with the rest of the team.
Indeed, here.
But it's about to come to an end, and there will be...
all good things have to come to an end, unfortunately, but yes, thank you. Have a good night. Now, we're going to have Tourism Australia as our last witness for the evening.
Can we have 5 minutes?
We can suspend.
Can we suspend for 5?
Yeah.
On the announced tomorrow.
Yeah. He needed it. All right, welcome back, everyone. I now welcome Philippa Harrison, Managing Director of Tourism Australia and Officers of the agency. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, I've got a copy of your opening statement. Are you happy for us to table and go straight into questions?
I am.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, Senator Cadell.
Thank you, Chair.
You have the call.
What are the markets we're currently targeting as our core international markets?
So we operate in the 15 markets that offer the biggest opportunity for Australia, and in fact they account for about 80% of the inbound business into Australia.
Yep.
and it's a pretty balanced portfolio. So across all markets, it is, we have, do you want me to go through them?
If you could, please.
Sure. China, Japan.
Do you have, sorry, while we're going through them, do you have a percentage of budget allocation for each one or not really?
Yeah, I can get that
If you
for
can,
you.
sure.
Yep.
Yep.
Would you like those at the same time?
I'm happy to get them after if I write
Yeah.
slowly. Yep, China, Japan, yep.
Okay, so if I look at them in size of budget, the two largest markets in terms of budget are the USA and China. Then we have the UK, Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, New Zealand, where else am I?
France and Italy.
France, Italy, Germany.
Indonesia.
Top 10's fine. Yep.
Indonesia, yeah.
Indonesia was 5. Okay,
Okay.
that's fine, yep.
Korea and India, of course, India, yeah.
Okay. You had some numbers on budget?
Jeff, have you got the budget allocations per market? So we have the way that we manage
I'm happy for you to table that if we're going to
Yeah,
do it.
and the way we manage our budgets is each market has an allocated budget, but then there's a centralised marketing budget that is, you know, everything we do is about marketing in international markets. So we can apportion that budget out as well.
Have your top 10 changed in the last 12 months at all? Top 10 target markets?
No, they haven't. They've moved slightly around, but no, they're pretty consistent. The other markets that we're looking at is there are some other markets of opportunity in Southeast Asia, and so we are looking at doing some more work over the next 12 months in Vietnam.
Okay. Have different markets have different costs associated operating in them and advertising in them.
Yeah.
Are we seeing, like I imagine Vietnam is not the most expensive place to promote and do things. Are we seeing opportunities become because of the different cost differential of marketing in different places, or is that not the case?
I think when we look at our activity in a market, the cost to advertise there comes into it. But I guess before that, we look at the opportunity of that market, whether it aligns with what Australia needs from our visitor economy. Are there going to be markets that have a lot of high-yielding travellers? So that's people who are going to spend a lot when they're here, disperse across all our regions, because dispersal is a key part of that. And do they have an opportunity for growth as well? So we look at a whole range of different factors when we're looking at a market. How expensive it is to market there probably just changes the mix. So we might, if it's a really expensive advertising market like the US is, it's very fragmented and large, we do advertise there, but then we look at a lot of earned media opportunities. So would do a partnership with a media agency and maybe work with journalists and play more in the earned space rather than the paid space.
Okay.
And so we are always looking at our marketing mix by market.
When opportunistic things come up, so I think this year, my wife being Welsh, she is pointing out that the British and Irish Lions are coming out, the Ashes are there. Mm-hmm. And to be clear as well, she's not fond of the English, but the British Lions are okay, and it is the English and Welsh touring team that tour for the Ashes, she points out all the time. Do we look at opportunities for that and piggyback on that? I noticed you've got Pat Cummins as an ambassador. Do we take the opportunity to get that? Do we pre-plan these sorts of things?
We absolutely do, and in fact, the opportunity around big sporting events coming to Australia is a really large one, and we see that as a dual opportunity. It's the moment when, getting visitation to that actual event, but the big opportunity for us is when the eyes of the world are on Australia, right, and how we can tell a story about Australia outside of the stadiums and look at future visitation. So the biggest event, the Sydney Olympics, for example, there was 3 weeks where there was great visitation to Australia, but in fact we saw tourism boom in the 2 to 3 years after the Olympics, and in fact it accelerated tourism development by about 10 years having that event. So we look at those big events as opportunities. So we did actually activate around the cricket recently, and we are going to roll out that same campaign, How's That for a Holiday, that we did in India. We're going to do that in the UK around the Ashes, and we're doing a lot around the British and Irish lines as well. We've been working with, God, his name escapes me, the married, the Good, the Bad and the Rugby.
Yeah.
Mike Tyndall. We've been working with Mike Tyndall on his podcast. We brought him out to sort of spruik coming to Australia for the event, and he's going to be over here, and we work with him on talking about the tourism opportunity around the event as well.
Okay. So the reverse of that, when there's an event like, and watch me upset the chair and the minister here, like our premier football game, rugby league, when it's played in Vegas, do we do any things on stuff like that to try and attract? I know a lot of Australians will travel for that, but do we, when we've got some focus, do we try and bring people here on the back of that as well?
Yeah, we had when it played last year, we did do some advertising around the broadcast moment of that. So it really is for us looking at, at an opportunity to talk about Australia. And so we had a few media there, and we did some broadcast around it. So yeah, we do take advantage of that. And in fact, we just had the Matildas playing in Phoenix on Sunday night, and we did use the opportunity to do some advertising around that. I heard about that on Triple M.
Yeah. It's
listening to the wrong
radio
station.
Not the greatest thing in the history of the world.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear what happened? Oh, don't worry.
I've been busy with estimates.
So,
yeah. Okay.
When you're looking in, given the cultural similarities between a lot of the nations we're talking about there, how do we go when you're looking in Vietnam? What are the connections we push there? What are the call to actions that we're doing in emerging markets that have been successful?
So we have a long-term research project called the Consumer Demand Project. We go into market once a month actually now, and we talk to consumers there. So we know what drives them for a holiday. We know why they're choosing a holiday, and we know how to weight that by market. So, for example, the Hong Kong market is very driven by food, and so we talk a lot about our seafood offering in the Hong Kong market. So we know what drives market by market, what drives their desire for a holiday, and so we dial up the different strengths of Australia in those different markets, depending. Yeah.
So I noticed in Qantas's results today, they've said that international travel is 6% cheaper year on year, different things, and the decision for Qatar and Virgin being approved. Are we looking at Gulf states or anything, given that decision? Was there a just-in-case plan ready, or will something be rolled out? I know I couldn't watch a TV show without watching the Qatar ads in Australia 12 months ago, but yeah, are we looking at something similar?
Yeah, look, we welcome the opportunity to have additional flights coming into Australia. To be honest, the opportunity with the Gulf carriers is not so much the Gulf itself, but the through traffic from Europe. So we actually look at how we activate those flights from Europe and beyond.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. That's all I have on that section. If someone wants to rotate, I've got another bank of questions.
Senator, sorry, it's Jeff Buchanan, Acting EGM Corporate Services. I can give you the numbers on the market budgets if you like. Do you want all 15 or?
No, top 10 would be great.
Okay, top 10. So USA this is for FY25. It's $21.6 million.
Yep.
China $18.9 million. UK $10.9 million. India $6 million. Germany $5.6 million. Japan $4.8 million. Singapore 4.8 million. South Korea 2.9 million. Those are our star markets, and then beyond that we have Canada at 2 million, Malaysia 1.9, and Indonesia 1.5 million. Would you like me to continue?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next thing I want to go on is a bit more troubling for me, the ANAO report, and it indicates that 70% of the 33 Tourism Australia procurements examined did not involve open competition. Was there a specific reason that was the case, and why was it singled out for criticism?
Look, in anticipation of this coming up as a subject, I wouldn't mind reading an opening statement on this, if that's okay, because I want to make sure that I get this right. But Firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge the shortcomings that the ANAO report has identified, and I wanted to thank the ANAO for their thorough examination because it provided us a basis to make some important changes. It's worth noting Tourism Australia has accepted every single one of the ANAO's recommendations, and we are fully committed to implementing new systems, processes, policies and staff training to improve our procurement practices. And indeed, we have already started to make improvements to our system ahead of the audit. We've also added resources to our corporate services team. We've put in a new contracting system, or in the process of doing so. We've improved our records management, and we've ensured that all of our staff have the skills and the tools that they need. We've also appointed an independent expert to oversee this work, and we will be reporting regularly to government. And I wanted to assure you that I will make certain that from now on, all of Tourism Australia's procurements are compliant and clearly demonstrate value for money.
Thanks. Who is the expert and when were they appointed?
So we went through a procurement process, very thorough, and we've appointed Sam Skelton from Yardstick. He is going to oversee a plan that we've put in place to rectify all of the findings that came out of the ANAO report. He's going to report to our Audit and Finance Committee and to our board directly on a monthly basis to ensure that the work that we've got to help us make sure that we're covering everything that came up in the ANAO report, and then to oversee that work happens and report that to our board.
The good intentions and the track record of what you do is great. I've got real concerns around the governance. Given the situation we had where we couldn't ask last time about the thing, and because of NAC, and now I think it's under Australian Federal Police investigation. That has a history. We've had 70% that don't have a competition or competitive tender process. And I'm told that none of the 33 contracts had a contract management plan in place. Is that correct? None of them?
So having a contract management plan in place is best practice and is optional for CCEs. However, as I said, we're taking on the recommendation that this is best practice and we should have it in place. So from now on, our high value contracts are going to have a contract management plan in place.
How do you define high value? Is there a dollar figure or?
Jeff?
Yes, Senator, that would be $100,000, and below that we have enhanced the processes to incorporate a requirement for 3 quotes.
Right. Fine. Given payments to suppliers is, I think, about 3/4 of your budget, I would say.
It is.
That's correct.
How have you currently, not what you'll do in the future, how have you been managing that what you have been spending is value for money? What is the process if there's no contract management plan, there hasn't been a competitive tender? How are you spending taxpayers' money? How are you spending the minister's budgeted money? What have you been managing to do to make sure that's done right?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I think in many of the cases that the ANAO drew out in the sample, record keeping was one of the issues, so we were unable to evidence going through that process in the strictest way. There was no evidence that any of the procurements were not done, or did not achieve value for money. There were some instances where the costs were shown to have been potentially greater than they could have been compared to other competitors. But I think in those cases we were able to evidence that there was a particular reason for choosing that particular supplier. For example, in the cases of talent, sometimes there's very specialised service that we require.
Okay. Given the history of the other problem, and I was very concerned with how that happened, what accountability measures are for staff? If this has been the case, and who gets sign-off what can happen to staff if they fail to comply with the new procedures? What are we putting in place for breaching these new procedures, and what was in place for staff prior to this?
So we've always had a fairly stringent procurement policy. I think where we let ourselves down is we just didn't have a strong enough contract management system that had gates that sort of guided staff through that process. So, you know, there's always really good intent around managing our procurement. I think we just didn't have the system there, and so a lot of the findings in the ANAO report were really around the fact that we didn't have this system in place that had good gates and managed the system through. So, you know, a big part of our remediation is putting this contract management system in place and making it easier for staff to follow the right process. Okay,
so getting back to this governance issue, who within your organisation is responsible for overseeing procurement and contract management services? Who is it? Is it Mr Buchanan or?
It is at the moment. So Jeff Buchanan is the acting Executive General Manager of Corporate Services, and ultimate responsibility sits, of course, with me.
So my concern is even little things. When I go onto the website today to see who it was, it's still Mark Craig on there. That hasn't been up. Like little things like that of being able to check the responsibilities, the person. Why would that not have changed?
Yeah, that should have changed. Mark Craig departed the organisation at the end of January, so that is an oversight, and we will rectify that.
Can I ask what the reason for his departure was?
He retired at the he retired at the end of January. He had some pretty big health issues at the end of last year and took the decision to retire.
Thank you. I think there was a previous ANO report that wasn't super great of this organisation. We've had the incident with the person, now we've had this. A very key measure for going forward from my perspective, if Minister Farrell is right and I'm still sitting in the opposition side next time, or even if I'm in this committee next time, is to see markable improvement in that. It's not a full Elon Musk Doge thing that we're doing here, but giving confidence of people that taxpayers' money is spelt correctly. And I love the fact you can roll out the numbers so quickly. It gives me the information systems, management information systems exist. I accept that from what you're doing. But I think as the managing director of the organisation, governance to give confidence to people that give you the money is very important. So thank you for giving us to that. And that's all I have, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. On that note, thank you, Pip and the team.
Thank you.
Sorry?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, God.
Not a very good one.
I was about to mark you down there, Deputy Chair, but you know. But on that note, thanks everyone for tonight. It does conclude today's proceedings. It's requested that senators submit written questions on notice by the 4th of March to allow for sufficient time for answers, and the committee has set the 24th of March as the date for the return of answers to questions taken on notice. I do want to thank all the ministers, all the officers and other members of the department. Thanks to Hansard Broadcasting and the Secretariat. And on that note, I want to declare that the hearing is now adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.